welcome to another episode of the Beach Court Podcast. The North American International Championships are this week. If you're not ready yet, you should be getting ready with us, and that's probably why you're listening to this podcast. Maddox, Parker, and your host, me, will have you covered. Don't worry about it. We're going to dive deep into the NAIC meta. In this episode, we will review the Japan Championship results from this weekend, where they played the exact same format as us. Talk about the Beach Court Podcast $600 jam that happened this weekend at the Wokey Pokey, where one of our podcast members made top 8 with a saucy list. We'll talk about that spicy list and some of the most underrated spicy lists that you could play for NAIC. We'll also run through all the top meta decks, provide a brief analysis of each deck, and end with our meta predictions and tier list for NAIC. We've got a lot to cover in this episode, so let's get started. We'll get right into it. Max, I'll start off with you first. How did you enjoy the $600 Beach Court Podcast jam this weekend and the current meta? What did you play and how did it go for you?
Yeah, I had a fantastic time at the tournament. Again, really for everyone else who wasn't aware of the jam that we did, basically when we want to have a chance to have a true NAIC format competitive testing tournament. So we were able to get some money on the line there. Partner store, the Wokey Pokey, helped us out with it. And we had a great turnout, filled capacity at 40 people. Just had an awesome time. It was good to have some best of 3 reps to really put some of these decks that we've been trying out to the test. I played Raging Bolt Ogrepon EX. It was a deck that a lot of our locals have been saying, hey, you got to try this. And Eric, you wanted me to try it. And honestly, it was pretty fun to play. I ended up playing 3 mirror matches. It was another popular pick among decks there, but I won all the mirror matches. So I went 3-1-2. And, so won the 3 mirror matches, lost to Lugia, and then tied a Guardian and tied a Dragapult. So wanted to convert a little more of those ties into wins, but still did all right. Had a fun time. And yeah, it's a fun meta to explore. There's a lot of decks that are really relevant right now.
Yeah, I really agree. It was a lot of fun. There was a lot of, Bolt Ogrepon there, and we'll kind of talk about how it's going to transition to NAIC. Pretty interested in our thoughts later. We'll talk about that. But Parker, you really showed up with a saucy list, and you actually made it the top 8 with this list, and you've been cooking it for a while, and you've been asking for our feedback. I gave you some consistency feedback options, and so talk about your list a little bit, and lead us kind of right in towards these saucy lists.
Yeah, so I don't know why, but I've been trying to make Lost Box Ogie Dogie work, and I'm always kind of like a win short of being, a good record. But I ended up making top 8 here. Basically, this deck is about utilizing Ogie Dogie, which when it has a dark attached, basically has the stats of a 2 prizer. But he's only 1 prize. So the goal is to get the 7 and start 2-shotting stuff with him. And he's beefy, and I have Monkey Dory, which also came out in the set. I guess they're kind of partner Pokemon in the game. I don't know. I haven't played the DLC.
Yeah.
But you use the Monkey Dory to just kind of move the damage off from Dragapults and stuff. So that's kind of the only way you can win that matchup, is that and preserving your switch cards. Or switch carts.
Switch carts.
Cartus. But it's definitely fun. I still, I don't know. It might just be the deck. It might be me. But I brick a ton with it still.
Yeah.
I have to play out of my mind to get these wins. But yeah.
I mean, what made you come to the thought process of playing this deck? I mean, it's very strong. I agree, but it's it's awkward. It's like you need fighting, and dark on a single prizer, and it just can get return KO'd sometimes, even though it's only for 1 prize. That's a lot of your resources used. What kind of made you think about this deck a little bit?
So it's just the strength of having the, hitting 170, which is a good number. You're 2-shotting. Yeah, it kills the minions. You hit Rotom for weakness, and a lot of you can steal a lot of games just because they can't 1-shot this Ogie Dogie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the real strength is just you make your 1 prize to 230 HP.
Exactly.
Right. Even a Tempest Dive can't knock it out. Photon Blaster's missing knockout. Right. There's just so 230 is just such proven to be such an awkward number in this format.
Mhm.
Reserved for Iron Hands, and in this case, Okie dokie. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so like, what out of the top meta decks? What's the best matchups and what's the worst matchups with a deck like this?
So the absolute best matchup is a deck that I don't really think is that good is Maridon. Like, unless you purely just don't play the game, like I think it's almost unlosable. Um, it's bad matchups. I'd say the worst for me is Guardy. Just because their Flutter main shut off the ability, and
True.
like it's just really tough, because like you can't spread damage on Gardevoirs anymore because or not on Gardevoirs, but like against that deck anymore because they have the Monkadoris and
Yeah.
it the Flutter mains just make it they make it really tough, especially if they open it.
Right. Especially if you can't flower select. Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see how that could be tough. Create some real awkward numbers for Lugia, right? Where Lugia has to use 4 energy on a Shinchino to KO a
Yes. Yeah.
single prizer. That's pretty bad, right?
Hmm.
So it's really interesting deck that you pulled out. What's your ace spec of choice in this deck?
Mine is Prime Catcher. Things I briefly thought of are Scoop Up Cyclone because just picking up damage, and I tend to start Raging Moon or Roaring Moon like 3 out of 10 games for some reason,
Yeah,
and some of those games I lose simply because I have a two prizer on my board. Um,
fair.
and then I briefly thought about Hero's Cape, but I was like, that's just gonna get vacuumed and stuff. So I thought about Max Belt to hit
ooh.
220,
220 on
but
EX.
I don't have a way to find it. Whereas like Prime Catcher's kind of a card that's live the whole game.
What
Like
about the secret box though? You can find a Colress whenever you need it.
I didn't own that card, so I didn't really think about it. And I actually haven't really thought about it, but yeah, I guess if you open it, you can just find Chorus with the
Finding Colress pretty good.
Yeah,
this.
if you've not been watching the Beach Court podcast lately, you won't know that Eric has been on a complete tear trying to make Secret Box work in any deck. If you haven't heard that before because you haven't been watching, be sure to subscribe and follow on your favorite podcast platform. But if you have heard it, then Eric still has not stopped. And despite all this, he's probably not going to play it in his NAIC deck.
Probably
That's
not currently,
that's
but
no secret.
I mean, sadly, my teammates won't allow me to play that unless I just go off the rip of them. But it might happen. I've already got my invite. There's no. I could be the first one to get secret box and a day 2 list. So who knows?
Assuming that someone will actually make day 2 with Secret Box.
Yeah, me. Duh. If I play it, I'm gonna
Yeah.
make day 2 with it. I mean, that
Yes,
makes
sir.
total sense. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So anyways, yeah, I mean, so congrats on your top 8 at the $600 gem. You are now $35 richer. But anyways, we got some really good practice. Thanks for coming out and sharing your deck with us. Those of you that are listening on the podcast platforms, we did kind of show the list here. But you can also find it on Parker's Twitter page at squint_PTCG. He did post his list there from this weekend and his matchups, and you can ask any questions you have about his list because he has been cooking and he has named the list the Zoo Pals. So if you
Zoo Pals.
are going to share this list with anyone and talk about it, refer to it as the Zoo Pals. As far as me, I played boring old Lugia. I had a great mirror match round 1 and didn't attack. Round 2, I hit quad thorns and not playing Flutter main. So my day was pretty much done after 2 rounds, but I fought it out and played to a 3-3 record. Nothing special or saucy about my list that I played yesterday. Just wanted to get some Lugia reps, and testing my ability to track my energies was the most important thing about yesterday. So I got some good practice. But let's move on and talk about rogue decks. So Parker, I'm going to focus on you first because you had the most rogue deck we saw yesterday, I think. I mean, I did see there was a table playing a Chin Pao mirror, and I was like, in this day and age, what the heck? But anyways, Parker, would you play this deck to NAIC? Is this a good play for NAIC?
I believe in it, honestly. Like if I could change just like a couple bad starts, like instead of starting Okie Dokie this game, and maybe if that was a Comfy or Greninja, like maybe I draw out of like my brick and win. Not every deck can draw perfectly, obviously, like, or the game wouldn't be fun. But I personally, if I were going, I probably would play it just because sure it's like boring old Lost Box, but I've kind of put a lot of time into it, like trying to make it good. Um, so like yeah,
Bro is stuck in the flower selecting syndrome.
I do. Well, I like flower selecting because like almost all the other decks in standard are just like dude, like
Beep
I don't know,
boop
they're
beep
just
bop.
linear. Yeah, they're just you just do the thing.
What do you have
Like
against Rare Candy Charizard, Rare Candy Pidgeot?
I actually have a lot against that because every time I play against that deck, no matter what, like they get it like against me. I was like, it's like I don't know, those decks are aggro decks, I guess.
Okay, yeah. So again, thanks for sharing that list. It's pretty saucy. Excited to see what someone else could maybe take it to a good finish here at NEIC. Again, if you have questions, Parker's Twitter is at squint_PTCG. Ask him some questions on there. Next up, Maddox, what is your saucy deck of the week? If you were going to play a saucy deck to New Orleans for the North American International Championship, what deck would it be?
Yeah, Saucy deck. I like to hail back to my Path to the Peak days from playing DT Emu. We don't have that anymore. We don't have Genesis deck anymore, but we do have Quad Thorns and Initialization, which you may not have known. That's the name of the ability on Iron Thorns EX. But the idea of the deck is pretty simple. Just say, I'm going to deny all of your rule box abilities, and you probably don't have any way to shut them off. So this takes a very divisive matchup spread. You play against decks like Lugia that don't have an out to Flutter Mane, such as Eric yesterday. Or sometimes you play against decks like Dialga that don't care about your Roblox abilities and just put a bunch of energy into play and one-shot you. But again, the real key in this list is the disruption and really how linear the supporter counts are. We're playing, 4 Judge to really interrupt. We're even playing cards like Giovanni's Charisma to accelerate energy onto your Iron Thorns as well as disrupt your opponent's energy. A really nice inclusion that I've seen here is the legacy energy, right? Not really a card that people thought of at first, but again, just saying I'm going to force you to have to go through 4 Iron Thorns, being able to use that special energy along with your double turbos or just your basic lightning. So again, put pressure on your opponents, and again, say you got to knock through all of these Iron Thorns while I'm using crushing hammers, while I'm maybe playing Eerie, while I'm vacuuming, while I have maybe a handheld fan, right? There's so many tools and different ways that this list can go, and just really put pressure on your opponents. So do I think it's a deck that's going to win the tournament? Probably not. If it's a deck that you want to maybe flip a few more coins than normal, both in matchups and with crushing hammers, could be kind of a fun play if you're expecting a lot of Lugia.
Yeah, it was definitely not fun. As soon as I found out my round 2 opponent was playing it, I was like, all right, well, I concede. Can we play a real match against any other deck? Because I'm here to practice. Because I chose not to play the Flutter Mane yesterday. But if you are worried about the deck, guys, just play the Flutter Mane. It wins the matchup. But yeah, so thanks for sharing that list, Maddox. Seems like you haven't changed. You still just love judging people every turn. So
I
maybe
just have my full art judges that I want to keep using. That's
yeah,
really
you've got your full art judges from your Mew DZE days. So, but it's nice to see you expanding as a player. But like, please don't play this deck. We don't want to see it. All right, so I'll jump into my spicy pick for New Orleans. And this is a deck that I've been trying to like make work. I've actually played to a cup previously, and it's gotten a little bit better with this set, with the inclusion of Scoop Up Cyclone and other cards that allow you to get energies to your hand. And that's Regidrago V-Star, right? We know Dragapult's attack's very good. We have other dragon attacks that also were very good. And so if you could use those on a V-Star while having a V-Star power, but maybe also saying, hey, I want Goodra in this matchup. Oh, I've hit Iron Hands deck. I want to play Noivern for a turn. Like, deal with this, right? And it has things in the deck like Halucha, so that you can still use Dragapult's attack and take multiple prize turns. You've got the Goodra, you even got the Miraidon. The dragon type Miraidon is very good in this deck.
True.
Because it also just hits 220
Yeah.
for without discarding energy. Of course, you still have Giratina because Giratina is a great attacker for hitting 280. And then you have the baby Regidrago, back to the Regidrago days for Giant Fangs just to hit 160. So that's kind of cool. So you got some dragons that you can start, which is a concern. So to get around that, you're playing Scoop Up Cyclone to get around starting those dragons that you need to discard. You could play cards like Trekking Shoes, Earthen Vessels to discard all your things, and you're powering up your attackers with Gardenia's Vigor. So you just Vessel for the 2 energies and put them onto your bench Pokemon. Scoop Up Cyclone, your active dragon that you started that you don't want, and then you're attacking that turn. So I really like this deck. You also play Superior Energy Retrievals, just again to discard dragons. So there's some really cool scenarios that you can do with this. And I think Drago has some potential, right? Because Noivern blocks a lot of decks. People don't like dealing with Gudra's effect. And then just hitting 280 and attacking with Dragapult. You can turn 2 consistently is pretty good. So I'm excited to see if someone can make this deck work at NASC. I won't be playing it, sadly. But if you roll up to a cup where I am, I'll probably have it sleeved up. So just expect that. What do you guys think about Radio Dragon V-Star in the current meta? Has potential?
I think it's always like good, honestly. But I don't know. Like it definitely has the tools, but like drawing with it is like so awkward. It's
Yeah,
like
it is. Yeah.
I think what's cool about it is that as more and more dragon Pokemon come out, right, there's more Pokemon that can make this Pokemon better. I've even seen some decks using the Steel Mask Ogre Pond as a bit of like a draw engine to put energy into play, and then
Energy
use
switch.
E-Switch
Yep,
to
that'll work.
accelerate them. So there's a few different ways to make the deck work. I think there's something there, and definitely a deck that I want to play with for fun at some locals after NAIC.
Yeah. So that was a fun segment about all of our kind of fun, spicy decks. But now let's get into the boring, more fun topic. It's like boring and fun at the same time. We're talking about meta decks, right?
it's bun.
It's bun. It's buns.
Now this is the
Anyways,
real stuff. I mean, there's a lot of going to win some money.
yeah, this is what you're here for, right? We got this weekend, we got the North American International Championships coming up starting on Friday this week. What's big about this weekend is we also had the Japan Champions League results. I think they call them the Japan Championships. So it's like essentially like their biggest tournament of the year, and that's how people qualify for Worlds, by doing well there. And we're going to review the results. So for those of you listening on our audio platforms and not YouTube, we're going to be sharing our screen during this segment, and we're going to be sharing Poke Book. We talked about this resource previously on this podcast, to share some Japanese results. We don't have all of the top 8 list, but we do have a good bit of them to run through. And just kind of tell you what won and what did well. So I'll be sharing my screen now. And to some people's surprise, the deck that won was Lugia. Lugia V-Star takes the whole thing down. We're flying high again. We got a deck here. They did respect the Quad Thorns by playing the Fluttermane as well as the Gemming Tower. I don't see a lot special about this list except for playing a 4/3 Shinchino. What do you guys think about this Lugia list that was able to win this weekend in Japan? A very large tournament.
I like the list, pretty solid. I'm just I think Carmine is like a broken card in Lugia, and I don't see that. But other than that,
Yeah, chose to play no
solid
Carmine.
list. Yeah.
I mean, one fish and no Carmine are some of the big things I see. But yeah, I mean, the Lugia lists are just so tight because you got to play 16 to 17 energies. So that takes up a lot of your space. You got, you got your 15 Pokemon that are kind of locked. Maddox, what are you thinking about this winning Lugia list?
Yeah, I think it's solid. Again, it prioritized more consistency in the Minchino and Cinchino line over other tech attackers we've seen, like that Wellspring Ogrepon. That is a popular inclusion. However, still did made room to keep that Fluttermane in, maybe having a little bit of a read that there's some more Iron Thorns, there's other ability disruption around they wanted to kind of keep an eye out for. Other than that, right, a little bit low on the discard supporters, no Carmine, like Parker said, but again, hey, it worked, and especially in a best of one format, if you're able to hit the good matchups and start 2 Archeops and Ultra Balls, then you're in good shape.
Yeah, I mean, they just kept Jacques Ultra Ball around, right? So anytime they had a Luminion, that'd be the play. And we'll talk about this more when we dive deep into these type of lists later. But the legacy energy is just so big in Lugia right now, and I think that's why we saw Lugia win this championship, is this ace spec really changes this deck to be able to attack with Iron Hands, attack with Laminion, even just attack with Cinchino, doing 350 plus damage and take 0 prizes for that knockout.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy when you think about it. So we'll move on to the finalists. We saw Raging Bolt Ogerpon make the finals, playing a really kind of cool teched out list here. They have the 1 Superior Energy Retrieval, the 1 Hyper Blower. You saw the Sandy Shocks. That's kind of their Lugia tech a little bit. And 2 Pokemon catchers to be a little bit more aggressive turn 1 so that I can Cloudda and Boss in turn 1. Also played 7 grass. I think we've seen 6 across most list. What are your thoughts on this second place list, Maddox?
Again, I mean, Raging Bull Ogerpon is really just strong and successful for its ability to get rolling and get rolling quickly. In addition to the Prime Catcher, having the 2 Pokemon catchers just gives you that little extra flexibility to take 2 prizes when you need to. Same thing with the Iron Bundle and Hyper Blower available. Again, a really solid list. I like the Superior Energy Retrieval inclusion. You want to be able to get energy back into the deck. Cycling them is very important. And just having them in the deck available to find off Vessel later in the game after Disruption is also very important. Also lets you thin your deck out a little bit more. And another part is I like the 7 ball search, 4 nest ball, 3 ultra ball, as almost as consistent as you can be. Just saying I'm going to prioritize finding my Pokemon, getting set up, and my deck will take care of itself from there.
Yeah. Parker, what are your thoughts? Have you played this deck at all? I mean, did you play against it this weekend and get some reps against it?
I played against it twice. Honestly, I was a little curious why the deck wasn't playing 1 Superior Energy Retrieval. Like, the only thing I could really think about was like late game, if you get Iono to 1, it's a dead card or something like that. But like, I feel like unless you're playing against the 1 prize deck or like your opponent bricked or something, you're probably just going 2-2-2 like literally every game.
I'm trying to, yeah.
Trying to, yeah. But like I do like the Superior Energy Retrieval. I saw lists playing not 4 vessels, and I think 4 vessels is good. Um, I I think I do like a little bit higher of a Bravery Charm count because that is so annoying to deal with.
Yeah.
But I also see a lot of lists not playing Pokestop, and I can see merit for it and against it, but like I think it's definitely a good list. I've seen some with 2 Squawks.
Yeah. 2
Um,
Squawks. One of the big exclusions I see from the list is the Lost Vacuum or any type of Guardy tech, because Guardy's a problem for this deck.
it definitely
And,
is.
and there was some Guardy in Japan. I watched some of the streams, but he was able to navigate through it, either miss it or whatever the case. And I didn't see this person in top 8 play against a Guardy at all. So I think they played against like 2 Lugias and something else to make it to finals. But yeah, that's the biggest thing for me is that I just don't see a Guardy tech. But maybe you just say, we're just better and we're gonna go faster and we're gonna do all we can to disrupt you because we have 2 Ionas also and
Yeah.
Pokemon catchers to KO your 2 prizers on the bench. And they pulled it off and they did it across 15 plus rounds in Japan. Oh, let's move on. We got a couple of more top 4 lists. So the other side of the bracket, the people that lost to these two folks in top 4, we again same 2 decks. So top 4 was occupied by 2 Lugias and 2 Raging Bull Ogerpons. So obviously these 2 decks are strong and we're able to navigate through a very large field in Japan. Let's take a look at the Lugia list. Let's talk about some of the specific inclusions that they include, such as a block Snorlax in Lugia. What is that doing in there, guys? Maddox, what are your thoughts on the block Snorlax?
I think it was honestly just a decklist error, or they grabbed the wrong copy and just said, we'll send it. No, I mean, seriously, I mean, I guess finding ways for alternate win conditions is always a fine strategy. You're only playing 2 boss though, so I don't fully know the reason for it. However, I do really like the Radiant Charizard. right? When it comes, we're always worried about this energy conservation and utilizing your attackers. With Lugia, the combination of Blood Moon Ursaluna as well as Radiant Charizard gives you two very, very powerful attackers that don't require much energy. So it gives you lots of flexibility to discard energy early, knowing that you can create two massive attackers at the end of the game for very little or sometimes no energy.
Yeah.
So definitely really like it. Radiant Charizard, a great, great card. Probably, if I mean, I think it has an argument for being the best single prize attacker in the game. So it's never
Pretty
bad to throw
much.
that into a list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, playing the Luminous to even make it more consistent with it. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Parker, you see anything cool about this list that stands out to you?
The Thornton.
The Thornton.
We love a good Thornton.
Are you
I'm
not
a.
go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead.
No,
I was
no, go
gonna
ahead.
say I'm a little surprised I don't see MUEX with the Thornton, but
Ooh.
but the
Yeah.
Thornton's pretty saucy.
Are you Thornton? You're not talking about only Lugia? Thornton Evolve.
I saw someone make that play yesterday. They
Yeah.
got Raging Bolt KO'd turn one, and he went Thornton in the Lugia V Star and Summoning Star. I mean, he still lost because he just got knocked out the next turn, but like it was a play.
Yeah, I mean, we look at the second place, the top four list here. I think this is pretty much close to the same list. The only things I see different are there's a second boss, one lost vacuum, one less catcher, and one less ultra ball.
Also,
One
no
less
Ionos, and also
vessel.
has the
No
big difference
vest.
is plays 4 trekking shoes.
Four
Yeah,
checking shoes, no
they are
Iono.
quite a bit different, I think.
Okay,
So
but
it's
they did play the
vacuum.
superior, so it seems like
Yes.
they were on to the superior.
This is
Three
another one of those 3
charms.
vessel lists, which I feel
Oh,
like, I
three
mean, I would
vessels.
play 8 vessels if I could, honestly. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like I just need to see energy.
Playing lady in this deck.
I mean,
Yeah,
I could see it.
letter of encouragement.
I could,
Hold up.
Let
No.
them cook. Let them cook. We're
No, your
cooking.
goal is just to never die with that deck.
Yeah, you just donk them turn 1 every game. You don't letter of encouragement never
Basically.
procs. So
Yes.
Anyways,
I mean,
go ahead.
oh, sorry. I was gonna say. I mean, again, just another strong deck. So again, but I think the key difference is some of those consistency cards that we like to see in our list. Like even it's only playing 2 Pokegears, 3 Vessel. A little more, again, maybe a little more on the high roll, leaning into the Pokestop as getting the pieces they need some more. But again, clearly working. I do like the Flutter Mane inclusion. Really helps against Lost Box, which is one of your tougher matchups, and is just another flexible single prize attacker.
True. It is also ancient. You can attach to it with your Sada, so it makes sense. Yeah. All right. Moving on. We only have one of the top 8 lists, so we're missing 3 top 8 lists.
Wow.
But currently we have one top 8 list, and to no one's surprise, the one that we have is Gardevoir. Gardevoir is very strong in this format, so we're looking over this list. Some of the big inclusions that seem kind of spicy to me a little bit is the Tatsugiri and the Klefki. Really valuing shutting off basics abilities. What do you guys think about the Gardevoir list that made top 8 and playing for Arvin, not for Irida?
I am not the biggest fan of this list. So
No Manaphy, no Greninja.
the no Greninja is kind of a thing now.
Yeah.
But I like Klefki, don't get me wrong, is very good. If you open it, you shut off Rotom, you shut off Teal Mask, you shut off a lot of things, but it's like a useless card after turn 1, basically. Or
What do you mean?
turn
Joust for
2.
10 is not a good attack?
I got jousted for 10 and someone knocked off my ancient booster capsule, and I was like, that's fair.
That's right.
But I kind of am liking, like, if I were to play 2 Flutter Mains over the Klefki personally.
Okay. 2 Flutter Mains over Klefki. Cool. Got it. Max, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the pieces here again, we're seeing a strong shift of meta popularity to TM Evo builds. It just gives you a better opportunity to respond quickly. So we see a little bit of synergy with that, switching to the Arvins to find those 2 copies of TM Evo, just extra consistency with it. Also, I think there's this card called Unfair Stamp that if you haven't heard about it, you need to learn about it and not get going too quickly. A lot of the Gardevoir lists now throw an unfair stamp. You go take an early prize. They're going to go unfair stamp you, evolve their Scream Tail, and then just say, hey, I'm going to keep hitting you until you can draw out of this. And sometimes you just can't. Other inclusions like the 2 Monkey Dory with the 2 Dark Energy really gives you so much healing and flexibility and ability to just manipulate the board. A really, really tech list for anyone trying to go and develop a strong list and a strong run where they're just saying, hey, I have so many options that I can do constantly, and I'm going to use all of my brain power to defeat you in this game of Pokemon.
Yeah. I mean, the unfair stamp and the Scream Tail is a true combo. Something we didn't talk about earlier. And Sebastian, I'm sorry for this. We did not talk about what won the $600 jam at Beach Court Podcast at Wookie Pokey. Sebastian was able to pull it off and doesn't play much when he comes out and just takes all of our money. Like, what the heck, man? But anyways, he pulled it off with Gardevoir, and he told me about one time that he unfair stamped a Raging Bolt player and Scream Tailed for all 6 prizes. So gotta beware of Scream Tail. It can wreak havoc with unfair stamp, and Gardevoir is a very strong deck, as indicated by our $600 jam results this weekend. So congrats to Sebastian. We'll see where Gardevoir lists go from here. Tatsugiri is definitely a very interesting inclusion with not having any type of rescue board or anything like that. You just have to hard retreat it or let it, get knocked out eventually. But I really like the list. It's good. Gardevoir is a good deck. If you're looking to play it for NAIC, I could definitely recommend for it. Moving on, we got how many we have? We have 4.
Well, so these are, if you translate the page, we can see it's like the
did.
finals from seniors and the finals from juniors.
Okay, but we have at least one top 16 list, right?
That's the one top
Or
16.
two.
Yeah, the
we
one.
have 2.
I guess we have 2 now. Yeah.
So we have
And
2.
that's it.
Yeah, we have 2 top 16 lists. So Dialga's still doing Dialga things. 14 energies with a jamming tower and a Flutter Mane or something.
That's a Flutter Mane.
For what?
Lost Zone. Just bully the Lost Zone. You can power it up in 1 turn with Metal Maker.
Sure.
Still comfy.
All right.
They can't comfy, I guess.
Let them cook. Okay, sure. But as you see, there's not many new cards from Twilight Masquerade in this deck, except for 1 copy of Jamming Tower. But yeah, the deck just does its thing when it needs to. It makes metal. It Star Cronuses. It takes an extra turn. They have 1 copy of Counter Catcher. Kind of cool. Is that
A
normal?
little spicy. No.
Not
little
really.
bit spicy.
Your goal is to be ahead.
Yeah.
Really, I think this is just. I mean, this is pretty close to Andrew Hedrick's list. I mean, I know he played the 2 gear, 15 energy. What was it? 16 energy, no Flutter Mane. It's pretty close. I think there's 1 more basic or 1 more Pokemon difference, but I can't remember right now.
It's Amazonta.
Oh, Zam, yeah. Swap the Flutter Mane for a Zam, cut the Jamming Tower for an energy, cut the Counter Catcher for Pokegear, and you have Andrew Hedrick's regional winner list.
The thing I can't get over in this deck is the 2 Poffins, and somehow they open it. I just don't understand how.
Listen, when you're playing Dialga, you just got to live with that high roll mentality. It says, I'm going to hit my research. I'm going to find it. I don't need Arvin. I don't need any of this stuff to find it. I'm just going to draw into it, get my Beldums going. Sometimes that's all you need.
True
Yeah,
facts.
so Dialga's still out here taking extra turns. Not shocked to see it there. This matchup spread's kind of linear, I think, but if you high roll, then it works.
Boom. You're probably right.
No need to high roll, just stealing turns is great.
I mean, you have to get energy on there, so in theory, you have.
If only you had an ability that could put up to 4 energy with 1 use.
Shout out Dallas for top 4ing the SPE and Africa this past weekend. So with Dialga, good shot.
Oh.
And shout out to our friend Colin, who playing in an NRG Cup, hit a Pokegear and hit 7 metal energy. So
yeah. Pokegear.
But anyways,
7 metal energy. Okay, the last top 16 deck that we'll talk about for the Japan Championships is, hey, a Dragapult made top 16. And the Dragapult that made top 16 that we know of currently, I'll have all the list that we know of, is playing the Lost Zone Dragapult. So they are trying to Mirage Gate to their Dragapult, or just attach twice in Rare Candy. They are playing 1 copy of Rare Candy, and they'll always find it.
Yeah.
I don't need it. You got a 4 Dracloak line.
I mean, how you find it is just hassle, right? You just
You don't, we don't need the rare candy. You have Dracloaks in play.
But anyways, so one of the cool cards about this deck is there's a hassle in this deck, and if you don't know what hassle does, it says if you're knocked out last turn, you can look at the top 8 cards of your deck and keep any 3. So if you're looking for that prime catcher, you can dig for it. You're looking for that one of candy. Another way to dig for it is a good supporter in a pinch. So I really like that inclusion. But also in Dragapult seems to be a way that's kind of on the rise to play Dragapult currently. What are your guys' thoughts on this top 16 Lost Zone Dragapult list?
I mean, it makes sense. It has slight synergies with its attackers, with Sableye being psychic and Zard being fire. Um, it's definitely a pretty solid looking list. If you get going, you can like cram and Dragapult. You're two shotting, I guess, anything that's not Charizard EX or another Dragapult.
Yeah, I think this was a really, really good way to play Dragon Ball DX right now, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about this later. I think the list is solid. Again, just being able to mix the early turns where Dragon Ball is probably not attacking with early cram punches. It's just very, very strong. I do think it's a little odd that we're seeing the 4 switch cart over 4 switch. A little small thing there. I guess
You
really
got
just
those
trying to protect the
backwards.
Dracloaks. Oh, sorry, they're playing 2 switch carts and 4 switch. I guess really trying not to have the Dracloaks get stuck in the active, but my thought is if you have a Dracloak in the active, then might as well just attach 2 energy and evolve to a Dragapult and just start attacking. Because, Phantom Dive is a pretty good attack. So, but again, players saw a lot of success here. The Radiant Charizard is very, very good. And again, kind of like Sable, almost reminds me like a Sablezard deck, which we'll talk about later, is like, you're just able to present a single prize board state with the Radiant Charizard in the active attacking your Sableye, and then at the end of the game when you need to evolve into that Dragapult EX and take the final prizes.
Kind of good, yeah. So, well, interested to see where this list goes and what's the most popular variant of Dragapult in New Orleans. We'll talk about that later as well. Give our meta predictions. So stay tuned for that. Quickly, we'll just talk about some of the seniors and juniors results. Don't want to spend a lot of time here, but just calling out. So the seniors finals, we had Raging Bolt Ogerpon versus Charizard EX. And Raging Bolt Ogerpon was able to take down this list. I don't see anything super, super spicy in either of these lists. They're mostly standard what we've talked about previously. I see two copies of Penny in the Raging Bolt deck. Respecting the Lax matchup, it seems like. And nothing super spicy in the Charizard list except for 1 jamming tower. What do you guys think about these 2 decks that were able to make it to the seniors finals out in the Japan Championships?
I like it pretty solid. It's a little weird to see 1 bug catching net in the
Yeah,
Raging Bolt
Ace
deck.
spec, baby.
It is basically an ace spec at that point.
4 nest, 4 ultra, 1 bug catching set.
Yeah, it is basically an ace spec.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, the double penny is again just really giving yourself those extra outs in a lost box, and the lax matchup. So meta call there. The 8 grass energy just extra consistent in finding those energies early. In the Zard list, I think what definitely hurt the Zard players' chances in finals is no inclusion of Defiance Band or Maximum Belt. Really had no ways to swing back momentum into the Raging Bolt. Also opted not to play the Radiant Charizard, which is another big hindrance to it in the matchup. So
Yeah.
Charizard player made a meta call, having a little bit more text in different areas. Opting for the Choice Belt, opting for the Jamming Tower, and just seems like hit a tough matchup in finals. That's some of the normal inclusions that they opted to change.
Yeah, seems like people in Japan were really, at least in the seniors division, they were really respecting the control matchup. You got 2 Turos in the Charizard deck and 2 Pennies in the Raging Bolt deck. So I guess they're tired of getting stalled. Instead I'm finally teching for it. And then in the juniors division, we had an all Lugia finals. We had a mirror in the finals. And one of these decks, actually, they both have really interesting tech attackers that they chose to include. The first one chose to include Noivern EX, and the second one chose to include a Luxray with the ability. I don't even know what the ability's name is. Something
Instant
swell,
flash.
something like that. Anyways, if you're behind on prizes, you can put it down on the board. It's a lightning attacker for 1 reversal energy. It really helps into the mirror, but as you see, they were not able to win in the mirror. So take that for what it's worth. But what are your guys' thoughts on the finals of the juniors?
It's cool to see Lugia taking the top 2 spots. I actually do kind of like the Luxray still. Maybe it's just copium, but I just like that card.
I mean, if you're playing it for the mirror, and you don't win the mirror with it, then what's the point of playing it?
It was just one match. It's one
I
match. All right,
mean,
maybe
it's
you
a best of
prized it.
3.
That's true.
I mean, I didn't watch it. I know it was streamed, but I did not watch the match. I'm not sure if, like that player was breaking and the other one wasn't. But the Noivern seems very interesting. Maddox, what are your thoughts on these 2 Lugia lists?
Yeah, I think they're cool lists. The winning list plays a Hisuian Heavy Ball. I think just for the matchups where you need that Noivern EX, just gives you a little bit of extra consistency to get that, but also helps you find your other attackers, including that Mew EX. So lots of flexibility here. I really think both these lists are a little bit different flavors, but are both effective and obviously made it to finals of their divisions. I think this just really shows you that Lugia is a very, very strong deck right now, as well as very flexible. You can add in your own little ways to play it. And if things go the right way for you and hitting the good matchups, then you can go and see that big success.
Yeah. The one thing I'll call out, and we've seen this across all of the 4 Lugia lists that we've seen that did well. Some people are playing higher counts of Carmine. Some people are playing no counts of Carmines, and seeing success. So I think that kind of just tells you how strong the deck is and that you can choose how you want to play it. And if you've got some good fortune and run well and play well, you can be rewarded. But that runs through all of our Japan Champions League results that we want to talk about today. Any last thoughts before we move on? All right. Cool. So next we'll move on. We've got Pokemon trivia coming up next. I know
Oh
last
boy.
time we were on here, kind of stumped
Uh,
both of you, so we're gonna let you both work together again.
okay.
This time I'm gonna test about how much you've been paying attention to online tournament results as it relates for North American International Championships.
Oh, great.
It's kind of off the wall question. However, we are getting ready to deep dive into our NEIC meta, so it leads us right into it. Are you guys ready? Do you feel like you're prepared? Do you feel like you're both going to get this right this week?
Here, let me just check Limitless Room. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
I mean, yeah, it depends on which tournament you're talking about, but or if it's all of them.
We
Anyways,
shall
as long as I don't have to say
see.
batty bad or bubbly or bubbly bubbles or whatever again today, it'll be a good week of trivia.
Okay. All right, so there was a huge tournament this weekend. It was the Tournament of Doom Regional Championships online. I'd
Right.
like for you to name and or say what you think or might know what the top 8 decks of that tournament
Top
were.
8.
And if you get more than 5 right, you win.
Okay, so I remember. I think I remember seeing a graphic, and like 6 of the decks were Raging Bolt.
Not that
But I
tournament.
don't. It wasn't that one.
It wasn't that was one of the tournaments that happened in the past like week and a half, but it wasn't that one.
Okay.
I was watching some
Well,
of the VOD
crap.
earlier. Shout out to Senior Doom. Puts on great tournaments for the community. Does these big regional style events before each international championship. And I've done some commentating with them before, so they're a good group. So yeah, so I know I think I could get 6 of the decks. But Parker, I was letting you spin first if you know more. I was
My
watching it earlier, but I had
spinning,
nothing to do. So
my spinning has stopped, so I unfortunately didn't watch it.
All right, you guys are a team, so work together. Let's see if you can name all 8. That'd be a big accomplishment.
Do we have to name them in order, or
You do
like
not
just
have to name them in order. I'm not
okay?
being
so I know the finals was a lost. Well, actually, well it was Lost Box versus Lost Box Dragapult. And
Oh,
Iron Thorns made top 4. And
okay.
I'm pretty sure it was either Guardia or Lugia that made top 4, but either way, there were 2 other Lugias in top 8 plus 1 Guardian. I can't remember the last deck. It was
Dang,
probably something else.
Newest
I was
stuff.
watching earlier. I have it pulled up on my other page. I just haven't looked at it yet because to be a good steward to the trivia.
Yeah, yeah. I was working today, so I didn't see it.
So far, Maddox has given me 7 decks. I wrote them down. He said Lost Box, Dragapult, Iron Hands, 2 Lugias, and 2 Guardies.
There might have been another just lost box, honestly.
What are you locking in as that 8th deck?
I mean, statistically, I'd probably say like Raging Bolt, but I don't know what it was.
I don't think I forget if one made it. I don't think one made
I
it.
feel like there's gotta be.
I think there was just a lot of
But
lost
I don't
box,
know.
honestly. Like I think it might literally just be a third lost box deck or another Guardy deck. Um,
Fair.
I'm getting owned
if you
by the
got
fact that Maddox was watching this earlier.
yeah,
Yeah, I was not. I was hard at work, I guess.
so you're working, you were golfing. I was grinding the content, ready for NAIC, just like you by subscribing to the Beach Court podcast. Thanks everyone. Yeah, I don't know this last one. Parker, you got a strong feeling about Raging Bolt? Because I'll send it. Unless actually you're a Raging Bolt, Guardy, or Lost Box. You pick of those 3.
You don't think it was another Lugia?
I said 2 Lugia already.
Okay. I feel like it's gotta be Bull. I feel like it's like that deck is just too explosive to,
We'll
not
send
have
the
at least
Raging Bolt. We're
we'll
sending
send
Bolt.
Bolt
We'll send in it.
or Stall. Yeah,
All
yeah,
right,
Bolt.
all right, all right, all right, all right. You guys got 7 of the 8 correct. The 7 that were correct were the 7 that Maddox chose, and the eighth was another lost box that made it in
Oh.
the top 8. So no Raging Bull Ogerpon in top 8 of this regional this weekend, but yes, this was an awesome tournament to watch. I think the results are very interesting to review later. So if you have some time, go review those tournament results online. Thank you to Tournament of Doom for putting that on. Really, really awesome. I got really owned by that question, so sorry about that. I'll get you guys next time. You guys got me last week. I'll get you next time. I didn't prepare that too well, but before we jump into our next topic of meta decks breakdown, our meta prediction, and our tier list, I want to give a thank you to Nakama Anime Cafe for the continued support of this podcast. We had an awesome showing last weekend for my birthday. We had a really good time. Everyone came out and we got to test the New Orleans format. And we got a huge Pokemon rave on 6/29 on June 29th. We had a lot of fun at that last year. So I know I'll be there for that. I hope everyone else shows up for the Pokemon rave on June 29th. Come out, have some fun and listen to some music and have a great time. And if you enjoy our content here and what we brought to you today, just please go to the YouTube channel, subscribe, comment your favorite Pokemon, and like this video. It just really helps a lot. I'm actually curious to know what everyone's favorite Pokemon is because that's just everyone has something different. So yeah, Maddox, what's your favorite Pokemon?
I mean, so for a while, right? I was in that Charizard boat of the basic Charizard boat. I eventually kind of shifted into like an Arcanine, like Flareon, Jolteon, still kind of leaning fire, but since jumping in the trading card game, I've really just leaned into my love of Mew. And yeah, Mew's my dude now. Switched from basic number 1 Charizard to basic number 2 Mew.
That's fair.
We're out here.
Parker, what's your favorite Pokemon?
So my favorite, as far as like being a small little cuddly guy, is Fennekin, and my favorite like cool, disgusting looking thing is Giratina.
Oh,
I thought you were gonna say your favorite cute cuddly guy is Fennekin, and your favorite, cool looking guy is Fennekin. Because that would have also been a good answer.
I guess he's sort of cool.
that's fair. That's fair. So for me, it's definitely Charmander. Like just the episode of like bros like under the freaking leaf, about to like get knocked out
About
by
to
his
get iced. Iced
yeah.
out.
Like ever since that episode, I'm just like, man, little Charmander's so cute, Charmander, how that goes. That's for the cuteness, but if you're talking about like coolness, bro, this guy, bro, Lugia looks so cool. This legendary Pokemon, he can do some cool things.
Have you not turned the calendar in that long, or have you kept the page open specifically for this moment?
I've kept the page open specifically because of NAIC.
Okay. Ready to fly high.
Ready to fly.
Ready to fly
high.
high.
Fly high.
I may or may not be playing Lugia. We shall see. Still to be determined, but it is a top pick. And we'll dive into our decks and kind of give you what we think about each deck, kind of like some matchups, how we think that deck does into the meta, cards that the deck plays and stuff like that. So first off, brand new out of the gates, we got Dragapult, new decks. We got 4 different variants of it currently. Maddox, you're going to talk about Dragapult today.
Mm-hmm.
What do you got for us, man?
Yeah, I mean, again, really, the point here is to kind of give you a little bit of details about the deck, so you know what these decks are looking like these days. This is your like meta cheat sheet, basically. Get you geared up. Hopefully, you're listening to this on the drive or your flight into New Orleans. But again, Dragapult EX, this is a new hot card that everyone has on their mind. The power of this just comes from the sheer damage you can put into play, right? Phantom Dive hitting the active for 200 and spreading 6 damage on the bench. 260 damage a turn. Again, over the course of the turn, if you're using 4 Phantom Dive attacks throughout the game, that's over 1,000 damage. You're probably winning if you can announce Phantom Dive 4 times. Like, let's just be honest. And it again hasn't have extremely powerful attack with lots of options and no drawback to it. So in addition, the new middle evolution Dracloak has its recon directive ability to help give you some more consistency, letting you see a couple cards, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one into your hand, put one at the bottom of your deck. So this deck started with a very, very high play rate in Japan. But as people played it more and more, got tired of the mirrors, naturally deck selection evolved around it to try to counter it. So, nowadays of the main meta decks that we're seeing that we're going to talk about today, especially in our tier list later on, is, Dragapult EX, you're taking good matchups into decks like Charizard, Chen Pao, as well as Lost Zone Giratina. Lost Box matchup, the Turbo Lost Box matchup, still pretty close. But again, really, Dragapult's going to struggle with those decks that can quickly apply pressure, such as Miraidon, Raging Bolt, Turbo Hands, other decks that can hit big damage or heal. You got like Lugia and Gardevoir. And also into your control archetypes, Quadlax and Pidgeot control has some liabilities that you want to worry about. As of now, it's a known strong deck, but not anywhere close to that BDIF status that Charizard EX had going into EUIC. And while Recon Directive is a helpful ability, it's tough to rely on that as a true engine. So there's consider some other additional engine cards, maybe a Pidgeot EX, Barrel, or even the Lost Zone, like other variants are playing. So, like Eric alluded to, there's a lot of variants out there. We'll just kind of touch on a few of them real quick, right? There's the Xatu build. This is going to accelerate energy into play with Xatu's Clairvoyant Sense ability. This creates a very strong single prize board state where you can keep powering up attackers, plus seeing a few cards as you go. Pidgeot EX build is another one we know that is a very, very strong consistency engine, again, used by lots of decks in today's current standard. You're able to set up your subsequent attackers easily and find your tech cards with Pidgeot EX. Everyone's favorite big guy, Charizard EX, is back. Charizard EX uses Infernal Rain to power up your Dragapults. They can get that fire energy requirement. And also, you play Charizard EX in your deck. Great way to hit 300 at the end of the game, or just throw a big beefy attacker hitting 240, maybe after an early Iron Hands or something like that. And again, I think one of the strongest ways to play this right now is the Lost Zone engine, utilizing Mirage Gate to power up your Dragapult EX. Again, this is probably the strongest single prize board state that you can have, kind of like a Sablezard deck of the old days, mixing in Sableye and Cramorant as attackers to, again, keep a strong single prize board state, and then come in with that Phantom Dive at the end of the game to clean up the final prizes. So, kind of like I said, I think the strongest build right now is that Lost Zone Dragapult build, followed closely by Dragapult Charizard. Dragapult Charizard helps cover for some of the weaknesses of Dragapult, mainly being able to attack those Iron Hands for big damage later. So, if you're playing against Dragapult, you want to expect that most of them are playing Unfair Stamp. This is, that consistency card for them. Again, just a quick way to shuffle, draw 5, as well as a weight that can extremely disrupt you. But look out for Scoop Up Cyclone and some Xatu or Charizard builds. In addition, any Pidgeot EX build is almost certainly going to be playing the Neo Upper Energy as a way to consistently attack. In terms like Radiant to watch out for, most Dragapult lists have shifted to playing a Radiant Charizard. Again, a better answer to Raging Bolt, which has come up a lot in the meta, as well as Iron Hands, which has been around for a while. Some could be playing Radiant Alakazam to spread damage, so be careful of those situations if you're leaving yourself open to some weaknesses there. If you're playing Dragapult, some tech cards that I would consider, I'd really consider a Temple of Sinnoh. Again, really helpful into Lugia and a little bit stronger than an Enhanced Hammer, really because you want to try to shut off multiple Mist Energy and your Gift Energies and Legacies. So there's kind of a lot of options out there. But ultimately, Dragapult's a really strong deck that has a lot of different options. It kind of takes a tougher matchup spread since we know a lot about the deck now. But again, still a deck that will have a presence at NAIC. So something you should be ready for.
Yeah, thanks for that. breakdown on Dragapult and getting us ready for that deck. Parker, what's your favorite version of the deck if you were going to play Dragapult?
Dragapult, you already know.
You're going to select flowers, aren't you?
I'm gonna try to select
Stop
flowers.
selecting flowers. Anyways, my
It's too
favorite
good.
version is Pidgeot. I just want to be able to search for whatever card I want every turn. Kind of cool. Next deck up on the list, and I'll take care of this one, is Raging Bolt, Ogre Pawn. We got a Bolt is back. I know we've had some people talking about Bolt was a real deck before it was a real deck.
I said that.
Yeah, you did say that. We've had other people in the Shuffle Squad say that as well. However, it's now here. It's an actual real deck. Everyone's saying it's good. Why is it good? It's fast. It's aggressive. It's a deck that has true donk potential, and something that hurts me to say and pains me to say, it's got better donk potential than Miraidon. You have to hit generators on Miraidon. You don't have to hit generators on this deck. And why don't you? You play Professor Sato's Vitality. You attach it to 2 Ancients from your discard pile and attach an energy to your active and an energy to your Teal Mask Ogre Pawn with their ability and attach it to another. You're looking at 350 damage turn 1. And if you're playing Pokemon catchers and Prime Catcher, it's a very aggressive deck, draws a bunch of cards. Some of the weaknesses of the decks is that, you know, sometimes you do struggle to Unfair Stamp early. You struggle to Iono late. But, you know, you trade that off with the real aggressive big turn. So some of the new combos that this deck has, you've already touched on a little bit, is that Teal Mask Ogre Pawn. So it is a grass attacker. So if they go against Charizard, it can't attack in that matchup. And it also provides draw power to attach. So you attach an energy, you draw 1 turn. Sorry, draw 1 card. And it's just
Draw
a very
turn.
yeah, be good. It's a very good, consistent EX that you can play in your deck. So some of the tech inclusions that Bolt will be playing or things they could consider is the single price Sandy Shocks. Attacks for 1 energy and does 20 damage. And if you have 3 more energies in play, or a total of 3, Sandy Shocks does 90 damage total, does 70 more, which for weakness on a Minchino or a Chinchino does knock out those Pokemon. That's why it's valuable there, as well as just hitting those numbers against Lost Box that you need. As you'll also see Bolt Ogre Pawn playing multiple switch cards. So don't expect to kind of stick something in the active very much, especially if they have a large hand. They're playing switch cards to combat the Dragapult matchup. You can include some Lost Vacuums to kind of help improve your Guardian matchup, as well as you can include Pokemon catchers to just flip a coin and run hot and improve all of your matchups. So that's some tech inclusions you could include in your list. So really, what are its weaknesses? We already talked about it. What are some inclusions that you could do to help combat against this deck? You could play Lost Vacuums because they're playing Bravery Charms, which can be annoying. And then you could just spam Ionos and Roxannes and Unfair Stamps and hope 1 sticks. Because Raging Bull has no weakness. It's not weak to any type. There's nothing you can really tech against it except for the Radzard. The Radzard's kind of a pain for that deck to deal with. But yeah, so I think it's a little bit more consistent than Miraidon currently in this format. So let's run through some of the matchups. So the matchups that you're favored in. You're favored against Charizard EX, Giratina V-Star, Dragapult, Miraidon, and Quad Iron Hands and Turbo Hands. So you got a really good favored list there. Some of the issues of the deck is you got 2 really bad unfavored matchups, and that's Lugia and Gardevoir, which we will talk about later in our predictions. We think will be top decks at New Orleans. Some of the matchups that are close for you are Quadlax, Pidgeot EX, Turbo Lost Box, and Chen Pao. So you got some good matchups there. You got some unfavored ones that you're a little concerned about, but sometimes it's about that matchup lottery, and we'll see what happens. So hopefully now you're more prepared to play Bolt Ogre Pawn or play against that deck. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say one small correction. The Sandy Shocks doesn't hit for weakness.
Correct. It does not hit for weakness. That's true. Yes.
But even the second attack for 60,
can't-
that does hit for weakness. So if you
Yeah.
get like 2
Yes.
energy, you can deal with your Cinchinos.
Correct.
So
Yep.
still have a way to deal with it. It's just you require 1 more energy. But again,
Yes.
being able to
Yeah.
mix in that single prizer, I think, is what really adds some extra dimension
Definitely
to
huge.
Raging Bolt.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you for that correction. Yes, the second attack is how you will KO Shinchino, not
Yes.
the first attack. Good call. All right, next up we've got the big bad Gardevoir EX is back. It seems like it's really cracked and it's well. Sebastian won our $600 gem this weekend with it. Parker, can you talk about Gardevoir and prepare us for why Gardevoir is good and how can we beat it?
Yeah, so this deck, when rotation came around, experienced like fall from grace, but it got quickly picked back up by like a really good performances at EUIC. The deck itself is probably like one of the best comeback decks in recent memory, just due to the ability to one shot 2 prizers while swinging with the 1 prizer. Um, Besides blowing things up, like you can have Screamtail to threaten things on the bench. One thing you'll see a lot about this deck, a lot of the winning plays will be stuff like counter catcher, Iono, knock something out with Screamtail, or cripple your setup even more with throwing a Flutter Mane at you in active. Um, I think like breaking aside, definitely like gotta be in my mind the best deck. Just due to like once you set up, like the matchup spread's pretty nuts. Um, Lost Box kind of used to be a bad matchup for it, but with Flutter Mane now, it's like being able to take those knockouts. It's definitely swings that matchup a lot. But it's definitely like extraordinarily rewarding to play. More so that I think than like the more straightforward decks like Raging Bull or Charizard. But if you believe in it and don't go, Ralts Pass or something like that, definitely super strong. Um, some new cards to include. Monkey Dory's like a must include. The ability to like move the damage counters from your guys to their guys. You can make your Drifloons with just a charm hit basically 330 on you know everything. You can spread damage to soften things up on the bench, like 1 prizers. Um, you need to play Dark Energies to do this, but bumping up to a second vessel, you definitely can find those Dark Energies pretty easily. And it's also a psychic type, so you can psychic embrace to it and confuse your opponent's active. Um, this isn't a new card. I see a lot of people still playing Clef Key, but as I mentioned earlier, it's like a like kind of useless after like turn 1 or 2. So I personally like 2 Flutter Mane in the list. I think you either have to play 2 Drifloon or 2 Flutter Mane. But basically it gives you valuable chip damage as well as like hurting setups. And one of the biggest things I think is, Flutter Mane, if you start against Lugia V Star and like they're only guys in the active, like they can't summoning star with that guy. Um, so it's like probably something that won't come up a ton, but may, you know, win a game for you right there. Unfair stamp. This card is like, as it says in the name, unfair. Um,
Broken.
Absolutely broken. I was kind of on the fence about it, but like after seeing it in action a bunch, like it's crazy. Like if you take 1 prize on this deck, which you're probably gonna take a prize before they take a prize, unless you've also bricked out of your mind or something. Um, Getting unfair stamped is just crazy, and then pair it with like a knockout, like a counter catcher on a guy that isn't powered up. Pretty devastating. Just as an example, online I was playing Lost Box against Gardevoir. I took my second prize after like not even you know aggroing. I was like comfy, like throwing comfies in the active to like gain more advantage, and I still got unfair stamped and stuck with Fluttermane, and I just passed. He just took 6 prizes with that 1 Fluttermane. Well, I guess he knocked out a Raging Bull. or not. I was confused too. Roaring Moon knocked out a moon for the last two prizes, but Hyper Aroma is kind of like the card that people were kind of thinking was the perfect egg spec for the deck, but to me, it never really was. Like, definitely the card in theory is like seems insane, but I think it's a little bit of like a high roll, almost win more card. Because if you're going first, like you have to put three Ralts in play for it to be good. And then for like your second turn, you either have to have it or you have to like Arvin for it. And
Well,
like,
you've already
yes.
evoed, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So like if you go second, like I think just Arvin for Puff and Evo is just like a stronger play, honestly. Um
Yeah.
Another card that I might include in it, Scoop Up Cyclone. It's personally like my second choice. Um One of the ways that this deck can lose the game is people just having boss and killing your Gardevoir EX. Um, the deck plays, one, sometimes even two Turos to like lessen that chance of a liability. But the thing about Scoop Up Cyclone is like you can Arvin for it in a pinch. You could draw it off Iono. You can also use the Cyclone to like you know, Monkey Dory, scoop it up, attach that same dark, bench the guy again, Monkey Dory again, or just prize denial in general. But I think Unfair Stamp probably the most logical one to play in this deck. General matchup spread. I think the Bolt Ogre Pawn, if you can survive, like if you don't brick, you can get a couple of routes out and stuff. I think it's probably 70-30 your favor. Um, I think Lugia, um, probably slightly in your favor. I put it probably like 60-40. Charizard is a match that is definitely super winnable, but definitely super losable. I think the games with those decks are sort of polarizing sometimes just because, oh, you couldn't Turo your Guardy like turn three. I'm just going to boss it and kill it with Charizard. Because you're not really taking knockouts turn two, and like it it just hits the Gardevoir for weakness. So there's not too much you can do. Dragapult, I've only played like a few matches with it, but it feels pretty 50-50. Um, if you can pull out some like sweet Monkey Dory plays, you can definitely push it in your favor. But in general, I think it's about 50-50. I think your Lost Box matchup, if you do play like the two Flutter mains, is like 65-35 maybe. Um, unless like the Lost Box player is a god and drawing like a god, it's like it's pretty tough. Maridon is kind of like, do you survive the early turns? Uh, I think if you do, you basically win. Turbo Hands is a funny matchup because if you get turn one hands, you lose, but otherwise you probably win. Chen Pao is another matchup that I think is terrifying because if they get turn two ninja, you don't have mana feed down. You might just lose there too. Snorlax, I have it at about a 50-50, I think. Um, I haven't played it enough. Playing the teleportation Ralts. I couldn't think of the name. The Ralts makes it so if you get counter captured and stuff, you just whoop teleportation back, and they can't eternally counter capture you. So, but getting there sometimes is hard with no other liabilities on your board. The
Especially with
Pidgeot.
the flute, right?
Oh, the flute. Yeah, I
I mean,
hate
most
that
people
card.
aren't playing Greninja and Manaphy, as we just saw in the top
Yeah,
16, top 8 Guardy or whatever it was. So it's like, okay, what
yeah.
liabilities do you have?
No, the flute. Ugh, that makes that card.
Uh,
You have to like blitz getting like four routes, and then like if you play the two Flutter mains, basically, or even like a Drifloon. So once you get the Guardy, but yeah, the Pidgeot control, I don't have any experience playing with that. I've never played that matchups. I can't give you a perfectly accurate explanation, but I think you're probably slightly favored into it. Giratina is a deck that, like I always say, can beat everything, but I think you're slightly favored into them, just because you play around being behind. Like that matchup's actually pretty interesting, but the two Flutter mains can also just stop them from getting there. And then Quad Thorns, uh, you kind of have to play well, I think, and really know when to take your big turns and stuff like that. But I think just the Flutter main, and I guess if you play the Clef Key, can definitely win you that matchup once you get the Guardy EX up. But yeah, if I was going to NAIC and probably wanted to give myself the best chance of like winning the event, I'd probably play this deck.
Yeah, Guardy's definitely a strong deck, and we saw Sebastian take it down, and it made top 8 in Japan. So we both agree that Guardy's good. So thanks for that insight, and let's move on to the next deck. We got a lot more to get through here. So Maddox, you got Charizard up next. This has been your favorite lately, and I'm like, Maddox, please stop playing Charizard.
I mean, this past format, the deck's just been like too good, so it just like had to be played.
Yeah.
Anyways, right? So Charizard EX, right? The big bad of the last format, everyone's saying, oh, it's Charizard, right? Saw so much success starting with towards build at EUIC winning it, and then just a stretch of Charizard continuing to win. And so this deck hasn't had that great of a high play rate in Japan, mainly due to the tougher Dragapult matchup. I am expecting it to still be around at NAIC just due to how many people in North America have been playing the deck, have enjoyed it, and have spent significant time with it, and it still remains a solid option. Anyone who's not aware, right, you're using the core of Charizard EX's Infernal Rain ability to power yourself up, and your Burning Darkness attack to deal more and more damage as the game progresses, and you're boosted by the consistency of Pidgeot EX and Barrel, and also you have your Radiant Charizard as a single prize attacker to just give you so much flexibility, so many options to piece together combos and take these big turns and have such a big threat in Charizard EX in the active spot. So again, when you're playing Charizard EX, your good matchups here, you have a good shape into Miraidon and Turbo Hands. They just have a hard time hitting those numbers. And a lot of Lost Zone Giratina lists have been cutting their Iron Leaves in favor of Blood Moon Ursaluna. So I do think you take a little bit more of advantage into the Tina matchup now. Some closer matchups these days, right, with Bolt, Gardevoir, Turbo Lost Zone, and Chen Pao. Some of those matchups used to be better. I think with a lot of Charizard lists switching to Max Belt, like we'll talk about in a second, gains a little bit of advantage in these areas. But still some tricky matchups in Lugia, Dragapult, and again, your control matchups aren't going to be in great shape. Snorlax, Stall, and Pidgeot control, and even the new Quad Thorns makes it very difficult for you to use you can't use your abilities with it. You have some cases where you can manually power it up between hammers and handheld fan. It can be tricky to actually continue to chain attacks that you need to take these knockouts. So, despite the matchup spread getting a little bit worse for Zard compared to this past format, it's also an incredibly strong deck that actually gained a lot of good options. A big addition that I'm liking right now is Kieran. So again, you not only have the flexibility of a switching effect into control decks that you can put back with Palpad, but you can have your Pokemon deal 30 more damage that turn to your opponent's active EXs and V Pokemon. So you can combo this with a maximum belt as Charizard EX, and if a Dragapult's taken 2 prizes, have your Charizard EX hitting for 240 with Burning Darkness, plus 50 with a max belt, plus 30 with Kieran. You just hit 320 in one turn, taking a one shot on Dragapult EX. Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, these types of damage numbers isn't what Charizard is used to from how it's played today. So just giving that extra flexibility to deal at higher damage gives a lot of dimensions to the deck. Also combos well with that Radiant Charizard, again, letting you hit, for 280 on that EX or V, or, switch it out of the active with Kieran's other effect. So kind of like I was mentioning earlier, a lot of decks are playing Maximum Belt with Charizard these days for the extra damage, really to help some of those tougher matchups in Raging Bolt and not Miraidon. The one I just said, the Dragapult. No, the big bad of the format, Dragapult. Yeah. However, some Zards are mixing in Unfair Stamp just due to the unfair nature of it, right? Being able to in the current format, right, using that Iono plus counter catcher and then knock out what you need to. Take that combo that exists in current standard today and just add an unfair stamp, add a Roxanne, turn 2 or 3 of the game. Really, really devastating effect that Charizard can hit you with there. So be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, just a quick plug. We talked about all the A-specs last episode, or 2 episodes ago now with the special episode, and unfair stamp seems to be broken and people are starting to play it. So we said that here. It was an S tier with Prime Catcher, and we think it's a really good card. Anyways,
exactly.
continue.
When you look at like A specs on the tier of like what they do, a lot of A specs are viewed as just more powerful supporter cards, or not, or item. A supporter card, its effects on an item, and unfair stamp being really one of the hardest ones to replicate, with it being a Roxanne that you can use as early as when your opponent's just taking 1 prize card. So, finishing up with Charizard real quick, right? Some lists to help in the Zard, to help in the Dragapult Zards, they're playing those 70 HP Charmanders to help deal with that matchup. Some other things you can consider is even a Mist Energy, help with devolution, as well as preventing the damage spread to your benched Pokemon, maybe perhaps like your benched Pidgeot EX, try to avoid devolution, as well as your Flare Veil Charmeleon to prevent damage being placed there. Some decks, I've even tried out a 1/1 Rapska, which has had some varying success, but what is consistent about it is that once you get it into play, you're kind of forcing Dragapult to deal with it at some point, or else they're never getting any benefit from their additional benched damage. So one piece to watch out for is also when you're playing Charizard is that new Cornerstone Ogerpon. Sometimes some decks are playing this, some control archetypes. The main one that's seen some play in is Raging Bolt Ogerpon EX. So, and then with its ability, prevents your main attackers, Charizard EX, Radiant Charizard, and even Pidgeot EX, from dealing damage to the Cornerstone Ogerpon just because it has an ability. So, if you're worried about this as a tech card or want some extra options in your deck, you can include a Gouging Fire EX. It gives you the option to one-hit KO it since it doesn't have the ability. You can even go as far as a Canceling Cologne. It helps you in the Iron Thorns matchup a little bit too, but a little bit spicy, and I don't think you see too much use in it otherwise. So, maybe not my favorite tech. If you are opting to play the Rapska, there's a weird line where you can use like a Heat Tackle or a Steady Fire Breathing with a Charmander into your Relor with Slight Intrusion to hit for 30, but then you add your Defiance Band and you add your Kieran to hit 180 because Cornerstone Ogerpon is weak to grass. So in case you didn't know that, that's one extra line for a little surprise 2-hit KO on this Ogerpon. Or if you're playing Max Belt, but you go to Relor 1-8. Yeah, you'd still need Kieran, but yeah, Max Belt plus Kieran plus Slight Intrusion lets you get all the way up to 240. So something to think about. But again, Charizard EX just remains a very solid, strong deck. A deck that, again, we know what it does. It gets stronger as the game goes on, and if your deck doesn't have a clear game plan into it, then it will find opportunities to expose you and just start swinging for 300 at the end of the game until you can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for getting us ready with Charizard. I know you've been preaching it lately, and it's still pretty good. And while Unfair Stamp and Prime Catcher and having like items as supporters are as an supporters as items as A-specs, pretty good. You know what else is pretty good? Like just having Legacy Energy in your deck. I'm gonna talk about Lugia next. This card is breaking Lugia right now. We saw it. We saw two Lugias in top 4 in Japan. We saw Lugia Mirror in one of the seniors finals. So like Lugia is very good in this format, and you have to respect it. And it's the Legacy Energy that's really taking this deck to the next level, allowing you to attack with cards like Wellspring Ogerpon, like Iron Hands. And there's even other cool combos out there that are still yet to be explored. Just think back to Lugia Silver Tempest days when Aurora Energy was a card and you could attack with Yveltal and Amazing Rare Raikou. When you can accelerate energies every turn with Archeops, and one of them now is a Rainbow Energy, the possibilities are limitless. So I'm interested to see where this goes. That's kind of what's breaking the deck a little bit. So you can put the Legacy on Cinchino while you're hitting 350. Someone can take 0 prizes on your attacker that just hit you for 350. So your big 2 prizer died to a 1 prizer that's actually a 0 prizer. And if you don't have Hammer or Temple at that time when you're KOing it, you are taking 0 prizes. Again, so some of the other things that Lugia are including from the new format is Jamming Tower. So something to be looking out if you're going first, right, against Lugia, because you're going to choose first, and you've got 4 Seal Stone in hand, you're like, yeah, I get whatever card I want next turn. Be on the lookout for Jamming Tower. You might want to use it this turn to play around that. So keep that in mind. They've also got the other broken attacker in the game. Blood Moon Ursaluna is a new attacker. Just allows Lugia to hit for 240. So like reaching those numbers a little bit further than 220 or not requiring an evolution to get there. And they can even hit as soon as turn 1 without you taking any prizes. If we really want to put 5 energy on it, Lugia can do that with 2 Archeops in the discard pile. So just be careful of that. You know, not all of your 220 HP Pokemon, 230 HP Pokemon are safe, even if a Cinccino is not on the board, because jet energy is a thing. So kind of be careful with the Wellspring Ogerpon. Like I said, they could be playing it. I think you probably say 50-50 lists currently are playing it right now. So maybe bench Manaphy or take a risk and say you ain't got it. And when they do, bench Manaphy the next game. Kind of cringe at the bench Manaphy against Lugia, but this is what the Legacy Energy provides. So let's talk about some of the tech inclusions that Lugia would like to include to combat the meta trying to combat it. The things you can include are Roseanne's backup as an option to bring the Legacy Energy back after it's hammered away, or even if somebody KOs you with Temple in play, you can bring that card back and still use the second effect because you didn't get to use it the first time it was shut off. Because the text only reads you can only use this effect once per game. So that's a way. You can also bring back, you know, another Blood Moon, another Iron Hands. You know, there's a lot of cool things you can do there. We've talked about this before, and I'm not sure. I haven't built the list yet. I haven't figured it out, but Secret Box is a card that you can include. Like while Legacy Energy is broken and really good.
Only Eric could spend 3 minutes talking about how broken Legacy Energy is, but Secret Box.
I'm just saying, discarding Archeops is very good. Even if you don't have Archeops in hand, it can go get Jacques and Ultra Ball, and you're being chillin'. So it is something to think about if you can figure out that broken list. We'll see where that card comes. So how do you beat Lugia? What are some of the things that you can do to beat Lugia? Really right now it's just Temple of Sinnoh, Enhanced Hammer, and Lightning attackers. You know, things like Raikou, things like Miraidon, things like Iron Hands. Yeah, thank you. Iron Hands. So just include those attackers in your list. I think you have to respect Lugia going in NFC. We'll talk about our prediction later for meta prediction and tier list. But if you're not playing Lugia, you should have a tech in your deck, at least one, to kind of improve that matchup a little bit, because I'm going to go over your matchup results right now and look at the matchups. It doesn't have a lot of bad matchups, but you know, those tech inclusions can swing them a little bit. All right, so far as matchups, we got the favored matchups. We'll talk about them first. There's a lot of them. You got Dragapult is favored because of Cinccino's ability to KO a Dragapult out of nowhere. Giratina Lost Zone Box also favored because, again, Lugia can hit 220. Blood Moon can hit 240. Cinccino can hit any number at once. We also play Ionos to disrupt you a little bit. Quad Lax is favored. If it's just a straight Quad Lax build, I do believe that matchup to be favored currently. Charizard EX as well. Same thing as Dragapult. It's favored. Just because they got the big 2 prizer attackers that you're carrying with a 1 prizer, or even sometimes a 0 prizer if you're playing Legacy Energy. The new kind of beat stick deck, the Bolt Ogerpon, you're favored into that because, again, you can just go Blood Moon Ursaluna with a Legacy Energy on turn 2 after I take a KO. As long as you get 2 Lugias down in that matchup, you're favored. So I think it's closer to 60-40 you're favored. And that 40% really is just like when Lugia bricks or when Lugia doesn't get 2 Lugias down. As I feel like if Lugia gets 2 Lugias down, it's a pretty favored matchup. Chen Pao, you're favored into, especially if you're playing the Wellspring. I think that matchup's even more favored. And this last one is going to surprise a bunch of people. Miraidon is now a favored matchup for Lugia. And that is crazy to say, but same thing as Bolt Ogerpon. If you get down to Lugias, you're probably winning that game as long as you can V-Star on turn 2 and attack and respond to whatever they're KOing you with. Because you've got the Blood Moon, the 260 is an awkward number for them to deal with. You put the Legacy energy on the other Lugia. They only take 1 prize for that. So there's a lot of cool things you can do. And obviously the Cinchinos are just swinging that matchup a lot. Some of the matchups that are close, Turbo Lost Box, just because they're very aggressive and like can just get your only Lugia turn 1. They do also play Iron Hands and things like that. And sometimes just Turbo Lost Box is just Turbo Lost Box things, and Lugia does Lugia things. So because of those two, it's kind of close. Gardevoir is a close matchup. You've got routes to win in that matchup. It definitely feels a little unfavored, but I think it can be close. If you get turned to Iron Hands and they just can't respond to it, then you're probably in a good spot. And again, if you think the people are going to play Hammer and get rid of your Legacy, and that's what they're going to do, then play Roseanne's backup, and that's how you counter that. Pidgeot Control is pretty close. They're playing a what's the thing called? The Great Tusk to KO your Archeops currently is how they're doing it, but there's plays you can do around that if you're really trying to beat that matchup, but it's definitely winnable. Some of your unfavored matchups, and I'm saying this is unfavored quad Iron Thorns. Yes, you could play Flutter Mane and improve that matchup, but it's still, I think, unfavored. Just because you're going to be getting judged every turn. And then Turbo Hands, I think, is a little bit unfavored because they can pull off the Iron Hands a little bit more consistently than maybe a Miraidon can. So, yeah, so 3 prizes on your Lugia is tough. So that's the matchup inclusions. Hope you learned something about Lugia. It's going to be a very popular deck at North American International Championships. Next up on the agenda is Lost Box. Parker, we have got some Lost Box action. We know you are a flower selector lover.
I am a flower selector hater, but
Please
I'm
tell
forced
us
to.
how Lost Box is good and what it gains in this meta.
Yeah, so Lost Box is a deck that is kind of like Mew. It doesn't seem, or like Mew VMAX, I should say. It never seems to really die. There isn't like a huge amount of discussion for it so far that I've seen for NAIC, but online it's been performing really well, actually. The Dragapult matchup seems terrifying on paper, and that deck's slated to be, one of the top dogs for the event. While it's definitely an uphill battle, it's not a shutout or anything. It may be closer than experts think. But for last formats, there's been a few different variants that come up. I'm not sure if there's a definitive one right now, or if any of these variants will still see play. But I figured I'd mention them just as an example for this event. So Lost Future was a deck that got played like very slightly, but it utilizes tools like Iron Valiant, Iron Crown, and Iron Hand with Future Booster Capsule to boost the damage into thresholds that make, thank you very much, a lot more terrifying. For example, having either an Iron Crown or a Future Booster on your hands allows it to hit 140. So you get over those little pesky Pokemon with 130. It also allows you to one-shot Lugia V-Star with the weakness heavily helping that matchup. Yep.
You're only getting 2 prizes, bud.
Hey, 2 prizes is enough.
He played Hammer on the same turn, so it's a full 3.
I don't think this will be the most played variant, or I don't know if anyone will honestly play this variant, as it's like somewhat gimmicky, but I definitely one that I like. At the end of last format, Hermione came out with his rendition of Lost Box, was featured Rotom V, give you that extra little consistency boost that the deck definitely needs sometimes. His deck had Iron Hands, Roaring Moon, Radiant Greninja as its main attackers. Basically, just tried to pop off turn 2 and knock out stuff. The simplicity and consistency of this version, honestly, is kind of what takes it into deep runs. As long as you're playing well and not breaking, you'll see a pretty good result. Sablezard is one that I think fell out of popularity a bit because hands kind of just runs over it unless you're able to find a very quick response to it, which there is that response. You can go, Radiant Zard early and stuff, and some were even playing Moon as a response to it as well. But it's still rough. Um, I don't know how good that will do this tournament. Lost Tina is a deck that I think will perform pretty well at this event. Of course, I'm a little bit biased as it's probably my favorite deck to play, but I don't think it'll take the win or anything, but it's in my eyes it's kind of like the Honey Badger deck, like Honey Badgers don't care and you can beat pretty much anything. It has the tools for everything. It doesn't get walled by any of those weird control cards. You have Shred with Giratina. You have instant knockout. You have hitting 280, which is like a phenomenal number, and it gets to utilize Blood Moon or Saluna, which was definitely helpful because one of the struggles, sometimes late game getting Iona spammed and stuff. You can't find your Tina V stars or Mirage Gates. You can just throw your Ursaluna at them, and they got to deal with it. Um, but yeah, new cars to include. I need to include it myself into my list. I just like didn't own the card, and I was just trying to get Ogie Dogies out as like well as possible. But I think every Lost Box deck will have a Blood Moon or Saluna in it. The card is absurd. You can Mirage Gate to it with swinging early. You pretty much always have fairly close games with the deck unless you're just turn two ninjaing and like blowing people out. It's got 260 health, hard for stuff to knock out, does 240 damage, and you can attack for free with it at the end of the game. I think a lot of decks, I don't know if they will, but I think they should play Spiritomb. I know it sounds crazy not playing it against Mew, but playing it now, pretty much every deck almost kind of relies on Rotom to like draw him out of bad
Or
starts
Luminion, yeah.
or Luminion, which I think a lot of not bad players, but people kind of use it as a crutch a little bit by like throwing away resources and stuff just to get the Rotom. Not having access to that is pretty big. Like, but against Stall, it's very, very huge. You get to not have them draw 3 cards at the end of every turn. So it's definitely really, really strong against that. Um, I think Dragapult, as Maddox was mentioning earlier, as it being probably his favorite variant, I think it is a decent partner. The energy types have synergies with pretty common attackers in the Lost Box deck. Um, as he mentioned before, you can keep your board single prize, just draw with the draw cloaks, which are like comfy but feel better because you get to keep the other card you put away. And just swinging with Zard, Cram, and Sableye, and then cleaning up with Dragapult. But even going Dragapult mid game is super strong, and it's probably something that mixed with the strong single prizes and Lost Box can be a little bit too much for some decks. But I haven't really tried this one as much, but um, I think it's definitely worth a consideration. We saw it do pretty well in Japan too. We see it popping up in some online tournaments, getting pretty high placings. So I think it's definitely a variant that has merit. Um, it's hard to put exact numbers on
Yeah.
it just due to being a bunch of different variants, but
We're just saying it's close across the board to everything, depending on how you draw.
pretty much like I said, there's tons and tons of variants. I think your ogre pawn matchup is like very slightly favored, although it handed me the L's round one, but that was
Oof.
not really due to the deck itself, but what was left in the deck with like 10 cards in deck.
Yeah.
Um,
Happens.
yeah, it does happen. Lugia, I'd say, is about a 50-50.
Yeah.
They can
Agreed.
definitely fire off with hands, but it's a weird like back and forth matchup where like if they go the strategy of throwing one prizers into your one prizers, you're eventually gonna beat them. Just because Cramorant attacks for free into their Minchinos and stuff, and then uh, you can clean up the games with Roaring Moon if they've gone through their mists and stuff, which they'll need to not get Sableye. And it's a pretty interesting matchup, but I say it's pretty even. I put Zard as slightly favorable. Depends on your list. So like Giratina, I think's fairly favorable into it. I even see some Giratina playing Max Belt now, and like that's a super insane card in the Charizard. Um, if you play Roaring Moon, I think you've got a pretty good shot in the Charizard in your deck. Getting the turn two ninja is very crippling for Charizard if they don't have Manaphy. And that's kind of just how it goes with every stage two deck. Um, Dragapult, I think, is very slightly unfavored. Um, in my list, particularly, I played the Munkidori. I don't know if people will play that card, but that is pivotal in not auto losing that matchup.
Yep.
Sometimes you go too fast for him sometimes though, and just ninja
Yep.
two creepies or Dracloaks,
Tricloaks. Yep.
and like that seals the game. Game two, let's go. Um, Gardevoir, I think is probably your worst matchup, which sounds kind of weird to say.
Yep.
But I think I have here unfavored against a good player, but somewhere in the plane of 50-50 against not as strong of opponent. Um, if they start Flutter Main, it's
Like
it's
almost
really
unwinnable. Yeah. It's
rough.
tough.
But even just like getting Flutter Main and Iono mid game is like pretty devastating too. Um, I have 60-40 into Maridon.
I think so.
I think you should probably win more than you lose, but I think right on has got a slight edge in consistency. And then like if you can't, if you go first, hit them turn two with something and they can't, or if you go second and you can't hit them turn one, it becomes a bit scarier. But Roaring Moon is pretty good for cleaning up that matchup. Having 230 health is pretty annoying for him. Um, Chen Pao, I have about 60-40. I think most like Lost Box and Chen Pao variants don't play Manaphy. So it's sort of who
Yeah.
gets the Greninja
Who gets
first.
Greninja first? Yeah.
um but as far as like trading out prizes eventually, unless they like get three Bax Calibers out and like are just attacking with that, I think like most games will be able to out trade them. Snorlax, it depends on what they Erica, Erie, and
Loot.
his Fortune Sister and Flute. Every time I play against the deck, they Erie me turn one, and I have Prime Catcher Mirage Gate in hand, and those are gone forever. And then they miss Fortune, three switching cards, and two Super Rods, and I'm just like, well, they win this game. But if you don't have that happen to you, it's pretty back and forth. Depends on what deck you play. Um, Latina probably has like the best matchup into it, just because of Shred and like you do play cards like Jet Energy, which can't be messed with in your hand, other than like Temple, which a lot of lax decks are playing like three Temple now.
Yeah.
But it is a pretty like even matchup, I would say. Pidgeot, uh, I would say probably is the same as Lax. Just about. It might even be slightly worse. But again, it depends on what you're playing. So if you're like playing the Raikou, you can chase down the Pidgeot and stuff like that. Whereas like if you're not, it's rougher, and then
Yep.
can't one shot their stuff. Um, I had this as a separate part, but you should be, as a regular Lost Box player, slightly favored in a Guillotine of E-Star. So the whole game is kind of just a Lost Box mirror, which they're just kind of a crippled Lost Box deck. They do play traditionally more hand disruption than your deck does, but if you can keep your board like in a good spot, you should win that. You have 4 rods, they have 2, and like whoever stabilize more typically wins that game. And then Iron Thorns, it's I haven't played against it, but depending on what variant, I think you should be mostly fine against it because its
Yeah.
ability only shuts off your Roblox Pokemon. So like Greninja, you just don't bench it in that matchup. It is annoying getting, judged or Iono'd every turn, but like your main attacker in that matchup is like probably Cramorant, so their hammers do nothing. Um, it really just I think is probably favored for you.
Yep.
Like, again, terrifying, but I think favored.
As long as you don't
Um,
get judged into 4 energies, right?
yeah, basically. But yeah, I like the deck again. Like I said earlier, it's more challenging to play for a lot of rounds than like
Yeah.
Maridon, where you use tandem unit generator and attach and stuff.
Beep
But
bop bop boop beep boop.
but but yeah, definitely one of my favorite archetypes of all time, actually, too.
Yeah, well, thanks for running through that. I know you're a flower selecting lover around here, or hater, depending on how you're drawing.
Yeah.
And sometimes, we don't want that flute to be playing. Maddox, you want to talk about control and their new cards and their new toys?
Yeah, I mean, so this is our last kind of deep dive into like the matchup before we go into like tier list stuff. But again, stall and control archetypes have really just become, even more mainstream and more popular really over the past, month or so. So while before, it's almost like, players wouldn't be caught dead playing this archetype, now a lot more people are playing it just due to the strength of it. So, as usual, right, this deck doesn't see a tremendously high play rate. I'm expecting it to probably be under 5% for like both Snorlax Stall and Pidgeot Control combined over the weekend. But you should be familiar with how the deck operates and know what it'll try to do to stop you. And so in general, right, like Eric mentioned, like we've been playing along all day today. Snorlax Stall, the new card that it gets is the accompanying flute. Combining that with Snorlax from Pokemon Go and Mimikyu from Paldea Evolved, to wall your opponent to wall you out and then limit your opponent's resources. Using the flute, you're able to look at the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck, reveal any basic Pokemon there, and put them onto the bench. So now they're putting in liabilities and trapping them in the active with Snorlax's block ability. At the same time, they're spamming Eerie and Misfortune Sisters, trying to continue to put pressure on their resources, and then even use cards like Sandshrew from 151 to prevent your Pal Pad from recovering your key supporters, to eventually build a board state where you've drawn through a lot of your deck, and then they can use basically deck you out and prevent you from attacking anymore. So now that's Snorlax Stall. Now the Pidgeot Control, a little bit more of a mid-range deck. This deck will focus more on denying resources and then winning by taking all 6 prizes, or kind of putting your opponent in a position where they can no longer win, and victory is basically guaranteed. At this point with Pidgeot Control, with the name, you're boosted by the consistency of Pidgeot EX and its quick search ability to go and find those combo pieces that you need to find the right supporter that you need, or the right tools to attack every turn. Along with the Radiant Charizard, which they're commonly using as an attacker, they have the new Blood Moon Ursaluna EX, which can deal massive damage as the game continues, for minimal energy commitment. So some of the new tools this card has is replacing the beloved Mawile, or the hated Mawile, is new Wellspring Ogerpon EX. Not for the second attack that we've been talking about with Lugia and maybe some other decks, but actually for its first attack, Sob, which if no one read that far on the card, it does 20 damage for 1 colorless energy and prevents your opponent's active Pokemon from retreating. So you mix that with a double turbo energy, and look, now you're dealing 0 damage. So you're able to infinitely retreat lock something in the active spot. This is replacing Mawile, but again, because while it is a 2-prizer, it does have significantly more HP. Combining that with a Defiance Vest or maybe Hero's Cape, now you have a very hard to knock out Wellspring Ogerpon EX. Gives you more flexibility for the player to begin penny looping, things like that. The other new inclusions, Eric kind of talked about a little bit already with Lugia, but again, the inclusion of the new old card from Scarlet Violet base set, Great Tusk EX, as an efficient way to target and hunt down those Minchinos and Cinchinos. Basically, their goal of it is to eliminate your Minchinos and Cinchinos from play. So that way, the Lugia deck loses the ability to hit over 220 on subsequent turns, and basically allowing a penny loop situation to deny the resources there. So in general, right, these control install variants have a pretty similar matchup spread, where both versions are pretty strong into Charizard, Dragapult, Raging Bolt EX, as well as Chen Pao EX. Kind of like we talked about, they're a little bit close into the Lost Box decks. Miraidon and Turbo Hands are decks that can be teched a little bit better for the matchups there, and again put on a lot of early pressure to put them into a tough situation. Unfavored into Lugia still in general. If the Pidgeot control is a little bit better line, so it's a little bit closer there, but a basic stall axe, especially without Temple of Sinnoh, is very unfavorable for Snorlax stall. Also, you have harder times into Gardevoir, Lost Zone Giratina, as well as the Quad Thorns. So some cards to consider with this and against these control decks is, again, like Parker mentioned earlier, that Spiritomb is a very, very powerful tech to stop the early Rotom draw that a lot of these control style archetypes rely on. In addition, Pidgeot control decks are relying on that Pidgeot EX, and they're not playing Manaphy. So if you're able to capitalize on that and put some pressure on, maybe with a Dragapult EX, or maybe even with Radiant Greninja to take 2 quick knockouts on those Pidgeys, you're really hurting the engine and setting them back maybe too far for them to return and come back from. Cornerstone Ogerpon EX is another chosen way to help wall out some of the powerful attackers in Pidgeot control. Doesn't let that Radiant Charizard or that Blood Moon or Saluna attack it, while also putting on pressure, and shredding through any effects such as a Defiance Vest. Some Pidgeot control decks have even included a Canceling Cologne for some of these outs. So a lot of back and forth this deck going on right now. Ultimately, it remains a very, very strong deck, and strong pilots will go to this deck, especially anyone who is experienced in playing these control archetypes. It's important that you know what these decks look like and that you have an idea of how your deck is supposed to beat that. So again, you're probably not going to see too many of them in New Orleans, but you might see 1 or 2. You definitely want to know how to beat it, on what lines you have to succeed and what keys they need to succeed when you're playing against it.
Yeah, thanks for running through the control matchups. I know sometimes we don't test against that deck enough. It is a strong play for North American International Championships. So thanks for running through that. One thing we didn't talk about with Miraidon, I didn't talk about it too much just because I don't think we need to run through that. I seriously think that Miraidon is a deck that if you're considering, you should be potentially not considering. I'll run through some of the things it's doing. All it really gains is they have a Tatsugiri that they're throwing in the deck to kind of see a supporter. And they're just essentially doing the same old, same old. They're adding some heavy batons, maybe 16 energies now instead of 14. Make the generators a little bit more consistent, trying to lean on that turn 1 Iron Hands with 2 double turbos in the deck. But not a lot more things in the deck, but just to from Miraidon, what they can include is a future booster capsule energy to be able to hit those numbers on the MP very much. More switches just to kind of not get stalled out after you amp on turn 1. And then if you want to combat the deck, you just kind of bring a consistent deck and be able to handle Iron Hands early and have some lost vacuums. But as far as the matchup spread, I think Gardevoir is favored, Quadlax is favored, Quad Thorns is favored, and Chen Pao is favored. But some of the matchups that are unfavored, you're looking at Charizard EX, Bolt Ogerpon, and as we said before, Lugia. So Bolt Ogerpon and Lugia will be some of the top 6 decks. We'll talk about that in a moment. Some of the matchups that are close: Dragapult, Giratina V-Star, Turbo Lost Box, Pidgeot Control, and Turbo Hands. So like just kind of that matchup spread. I don't think it's a deck you'll play, and we'll talk about it in our tier list a little bit later. But that is the matchup spread. So next, we would like to move on and talk about our tier list and build our tier list with you live. I'll try to run through this a little quickly. I know it's a bit of a longer episode, but This content's very important for anyone trying to get ready for North American International Championship. So I'll start sharing my screen. I was kind of working behind the scenes and I went ahead and made a tier list. What do you guys think about this tier list?
Waveboard.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good, right? Nice throwback to Wailord EX's previous runs at Nats. I forget exactly which year. But I mean, yeah, ultimately, right, if you're this far from the event, you should be choosing from the decks you're most comfortable with and that have most of the time in. Ultimately, your matchup knowledge and your level of comfort with the deck is going to be much more successful than anything you cook up late Thursday night
Yep.
on little to no sleep.
Yeah.
So if you've
Yeah.
never played a game with a deck that you're thinking about or that we say is a really, really good deck, don't play it. Play something you know.
Yeah.
Does that cover our tier
Yeah.
list discussion?
That's a tier list. That's all we got for anyways.
Yep. So have a nice.
But yeah, just seriously, play anything you're comfortable with. We keep saying that. I wanted to kind of reiterate that to start our tier list, and I'll probably just keep that one on there because it's a good reminder for anyone looking at these tier lists. Just have some fun and play what you're comfortable with. With that being said, all these decks are not D tier decks. We will provide our input and move them out of this tier. Our opinions will be for the North American International Championship specifically, not just about the strength of the deck. So we will be moving decks up. Let's start from left to right, guys. Lugia, is it going A or S? I don't think it can go any lower than A.
I think it's probably S.
Yeah, I think of decks that has the highest power level to succeed in a tournament, right? Lugia is definitely up there.
So Lugia is a very good play for North American International Championships. We've been saying that all episode. We've also been saying Gardevoir is very good. Is it also S tier?
I believe so.
I think so. I think that anyone going that is comfortable with one of these two decks should be playing one of these two decks.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. So Lost Zone box, we go in A or B?
I'd say A personally.
I mean, it's seeing
It's
a lot
been
of
doing.
results, right? Yeah.
The numbers are showing right now, which initially wasn't in the discussion really, but the numbers are kind of coming through.
Yeah, I'm fine with A tier.
A tier, cool. Snorlax stall. If Lugia is an S tier deck and Gardevoir is an S tier deck, where's Snorlax fallen?
Probably B. I think he got a pretty good shot at like every other deck almost, but
Yeah, I mean, other than the Lugia and Gardevoir, which are tricky matchups, and
but that'd
again,
be the-
Snorlax, if you
yeah.
are playing heavy temples, like I think you can turn that matchup around a little bit. But ultimately, like it's a very strong spot. I think just due to those tough matchups, it's kind of stopped at B tier. But Pidgeot
So-
Control, on the other hand,
I was gonna say, are we saying Pidgeot control is better than Snorlax control? And it goes in A?
definitely, in my
I think
opinion.
I think for this event, yes, I'd be like maybe higher B tier than Lax, but I can see it in A as well.
Yeah, I think
think
it is
so
a strong
too.
play. I mean, people are not practicing against it enough. If you know how to play it well, and you're comfortable with the deck, then I think it is a solid play into this meta. Dialga Matang, Maddox, I know you want this in S tier, but it's just not there.
I don't think it's an S tier, but I mean, it's again, stealing turns and hitting for big damage is solid. I still don't think it's anywhere higher than B, but maybe belongs in even in C.
Yeah, I vote C. Parker, where are you voting?
I think maybe C. So the deck itself is still really good, but your entire game almost depends on how hard you pop off. And like if you're gonna play a pop off deck, why not just play Bolt, I guess.
Right, right. So we'll say C, probably not a good play for this event.
I think you could do fine with it, but I don't think you're gonna win the event with it.
Andrew Hedrick, if you're listening,
All right, so Giratina Lost Zone box. This is a deck that takes 50/50s across the board for the most part. Doesn't have any like truly unfavored, like bad matchups, but struggles with some consistency issues and getting going. Are we putting this higher than B? Or does it belong
No.
with Dialga?
I think it's a solid B tier. Some of the matchups hold it back, some of the consistency of it. But again, good team of players I think will show up with it and do respectably well. Probably not, probably not any in the top 8 though.
Yeah, I don't think you can like not run hot's like kind of the right word, but kind of the wrong word. But I don't think you can like do that enough to like win this event with
Yeah, I mean,
Tina.
I think Tina's run hot is like, did you get it off of Unfair Stamp or Roxanne? Oh, cool, you didn't. I win.
Yeah,
And if you're gonna do that, why not play Gardevoir, right?
pretty much.
Maridon. I don't think this is better than Dialga. I think Dialga is a
I
better
think
play for this
Dialga's
event.
better as well.
Yeah, I think
I
Dialga is a
I
better
think
play.
I think you're sipping the hate Maridon juice too much, and any deck that can go turn 1 Iron Hands has to at minimum be B tier.
Oh,
I think if that's the case, like play hands. I don't know, cause like I think Bolt's just a better version of it, and then like hands is just a better hands deck. Personally,
I'll put it in B for now.
for now,
But I think Dialga's better than Maridon. I think
I
Dialga's a better and when I say that, it's a better play for the tournament. I don't think Maridon's a good play for this tournament.
I think you could day 2 with it, but
Yeah.
not too much farther
Like
unless
you
you're
gotta get
just
like the
you're
nuts on all the
blazing.
matchups, right? Like you gotta
Yeah,
get like matchup luck roulette to win this event with Maridon.
yeah, you got to be blazing with it too. Turn 1 attack like every game.
Yeah. All right, I'll listen to you, Max. I'll move it up a little bit, but we're gonna come back to that. All right, so let's just run through all the Dragapults. We've got 4 of them. I gotta remove this
You got
one.
5.
Yep, I gotta remove it. My bad.
We love this so
Resets it.
much.
I did this earlier. I'll fix it. It's fine.
Uh,
You
Sorry
see the
for
thing,
those.
removing selected decks already placed in tier may cause the page to crash. That's exactly what happened.
You have a good deck. Anyways, I will fix this later for a nice picture. For those of you who are watching, I'm sorry that I crashed the page. We'll just
oh,
we'll just move this one out. I don't have time to fix it while we're here working on it. Okay, so we've got 4 versions of Dragapult that we actually want to put on our tier list. We got Dragapult Lost Zone Box, Dragapult Charizard, and Dragapult Xatu, and Dragapult Pidgeot. So I think we've said Lost Zone Box is the best version of it. How high up is it going?
I think all of them are A tier.
Saucy take.
I think that Dragapult Lost Zone like has the potential to do very, very well, but it might not just be proven enough in like online events and a little bit too. It would be a little too hot to put it in S tier, but I do think it's an A tier deck that could have a very, very good showing in the event.
I agree.
Max Parker said all of them in A.
I'm a little less high on the rest of them. I think Dragapult Charizard is an A. Xatu, you spelled Xatu wrong, by the way.
I sure
But
did. Yep. That's
but
what happens when we record at 10:30 p.m. Let's go.
but I mean they're both good. I do think there's a world where you put Xatu and Pidgeot in B tier though.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I mean, like the Pidgeot, I like it a lot. I think it's strong. I mean,
It has other weaknesses, right? You need to play the Neo Upper Energy, has some troubles with energy conservation. And then the Xatu, right? If you're not, Xatu isn't a strong enough draw engine. Um, I think it would succeed more if we're expecting a higher Dragapult play rate, because Dragapult Xatu is very good in the mirror, especially with like Radiant Alakazam and stuff.
yeah,
But at this stage, if we're expecting Dragapult to have kind of fallen off a little bit, then you're losing a lot of the value from Xatu
sure.
when it's maybe not as good into the rest of the
When I'm
deck.
looking at our tier list, Maridon is not on the same power level as these 2 decks in the current format.
I agree.
Well, you're just like literally hating on Maridon for no reason.
I've played way more of games of this deck than you have, bud.
Listen, as someone who started 0-2-1 in Toronto with Maridon, I should be the hater if anyone.
I mean, you're just like in theory saying, hey, if I get turn 1 Iron Hands, yeah, sure, it's good. Yeah, it's great. But like, however,
I'm sorry, isn't winning games of Pokemon the way you win the tournament?
how many times do you think that's going to happen realistically? Out of 10.
Out of 10? Yeah,
I'm
4.
saying like, yeah, 4. That's not enough.
And you'll lose every other game. We don't have to debate Maridon now, but
Anyways, I just don't
there's
think.
enough room in B tier for lots of decks.
But
There can be lots
I
of mid
think these
decks.
are better than Maridon, and I don't want them in the same tier as Maridon.
Okay, then you make your tier list how you want to make it.
Where are we putting these Dragapults, guys?
Is Dragapult Zatu not the deck of choice for most? It's that version, not the deck of
It's
choice for
been
most.
it kind of came in as the most popular variant from Japan, especially. Again, I think the reason it saw the most success there is because of its strength in the mirror. Lately, it has fallen a little bit out of favor, I think. It's still likely. I mean, I think if you do see your opponent flip over Dragapult, like you probably expect that it's Zatu at this point.
Yeah.
Still,
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
but I think it's one of the weaker of the variants personally.
All right, we'll put it in B with Maridon. See where this ends up. All right, next up is Raging Bolt Ogre Pawn. This deck is very aggressive. It's very strong. It's made it to a couple of finals appearances. It destroyed some of the online events. People are starting to combat it a little bit because it's so it is so popular and good. Where are we living with Raging Bolt Ogre Pawn? Is this just an A tier deck and that's where it is?
I would say in the realm of between A and S,
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
As a
go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry.
No, you go
As a
ahead.
play for a big event, I think it is a good deck because it's pretty simplistic. You just attach your energies. You can't really mess up that bad, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's a strong deck, easy to pick up and play, very high power level. I think there's also still some ability to throw in the right text there, as well as maximize your sequencing to assure success. I think solidly in A tier, and is a deck that'll definitely show up and be very strong this weekend.
yeah, I think it'll be I mean, I'd almost consider it as the most played.
We'll get to that. Hold that
True.
thought. We're gonna get to
True.
that after this tier list. That'll be our last topic of discussion. I like it in A tier as well, so we'll put it in A tier for now. Future hands. We've got attackers like you can put your Iron Thorns in here. You can still play Iron Hands. It's seen some success in some online tournaments. We're going higher than B? No,
No.
right? Okay, so is it a C tier deck or is it a B tier deck? I don't think it's D because it's like it is just consistent. It does its thing. Do you have answers to it?
Right. I'd consider it B probably.
I
If
think
you
B. Yeah, just go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, if your opponent doesn't hit turn 2 candy, like your win percentage goes like through the roof. And like, I don't know. It's a deck that has snuck its way into a lot of top eights recently, even with all like the Zard and stuff
Yep.
floating
It just
around.
won in Bologna. Bologna? How do I say this word? I don't know. I just won this weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the reason it saw a lot of success lately is just due to the rise of Lugia from LA, as well as decline of Charizard overall. So, with less Charizard in the field, Future Hands does get a little bit better. Again, early Iron Hands is always good. Somewhere between that B and C tier for me.
I'm gonna say B, just because if we're putting Maridon there, we got to put Future Hands there. I think Future Hands is better than Maridon.
I think it is slightly.
Golden Go, our friend Abby's favorite Pokemon that she's been playing a lot. Where are we going with this? Is it staying here or is it moving up?
Uh hmm. I don't know if any of the decks on this list are D. I mean, maybe Greninja, but I don't know. You still have the potential to, one
Pop
shot
off.
big things a lot. I'd say C,
C.
maybe.
I can get behind C. I mean, I think it's still a deck that can, like you said, pop off and just one shot all the big things. But struggles against some of those single prize and like Gardevoir and stuff.
Yeah, I just think a tough Dragon Ball matchup, tough
Yeah.
Lugia matchup,
Yeah.
Yeah.
tough Bolt matchup kind of holds it back.
Yeah.
C or D?
I say C. Personally.
Good with that, Maddox?
Yep.
All right, Quad Thorns. Favorable matchup in the Lugia. Do other things elsewhere. Where are we landing with Quad Thorns?
It's weird because like I think you all but auto win Lugia, which I think will be pretty heavily played.
Yeah.
So having a couple rounds where you just sit down and pretty much know you've won is like pretty enticing.
Yep.
Um I don't know. I wouldn't put it higher than B, but
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, is it better than? Is it like on par with Giratina Lost Box? Like, I would say no. I would say this would be a C tier play for this event,
perhaps, yeah.
just because like Lugias can play Flutter Mane to counter you.
Yeah, I think you're only beating Lugia, and that's if they don't tech for you. And given that the deck with the tech just won in
Right.
Japan, then I think
Right.
maybe a little bit worse. I think once lists get a little more streamlined and we start to see like more Pokemon that are like as heavily dependent on abilities as Lugia, then maybe it gets a little bit better.
Okay.
I think it's got like a maybe a favorable Zard matchup too. But like
Yeah, it's close. I mean, they can just hammer away energies, but you can just attach them. So
Yeah, if you're able to set up a Zard though,
you just win. Yeah.
like if you get a Zard with enough energy on it, and then they have a really hard chance, I think, because they're just hitting for too much damage at that point.
Chin-Pao Baxcalibur. It's still around. It's still here. Maddox, what do you think? Where is this landing?
Really tough spot. I haven't spent a lot of time with this deck. I mean, I feel like theoretically it should still be okay. I think the Rise of Lugia makes it a little bit trickier. Turn 2 Greninja is still great. Doesn't have a great time in a Dragapult because you still want to play all of your one retreat guys with 60 HP. It's somewhere in that like mid tier range.
Same level as Giratina.
I like B to C tier range. I don't have enough time into it as much as I want to lately. But again, if you're a strong Chen-Pao player and you're just doing your thing and you're going to avoid the Dragapults or you're going to go KO with Greninja before they can do anything, I think you're still in good shape. Same thing in that Lost Box matchup, kind of like Parker was talking about earlier.
yeah, turn 2 backs destroys a lot of the format.
What do you
Or
think,
turn
Parker?
2 ninja.
B or C?
Or turn 2 hands.
Yeah, turn 2 hands too. It's tough. I think it's probably Dialga tier. Like on that same kind of plane.
I'm fine with that.
All right. Some of our friends that listen to this podcast, Phil, shout out. Are we moving Greninja up or is it staying here in D tier?
It's definitely got potential, but the thing that I think makes it worse currently is that Arceus has kind of disappeared, which
Yeah,
was
where's
a good
Arceus on
matchup for it.
here?
And like you're not gonna hit more than one Quad Thorns, I think. Like the thing about that deck, and I think the reason it's like not good is you cannot Irida for the Greninja. And like that just sucks. It sucks. Um so honestly, it's a phenomenal card, but I think for this event it's probably around the D tier. Because like I think it's very unrealistic to say, hey, I could get the, turn 2 second attack. It's pretty
Yeah.
unrealistic, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too unexplored right now and not refined enough to move it out of D tier, in my opinion.
Okay.
I hope someone cracks it, though.
We got 2 more we want to talk about. I got some cleaning up to do on this list after we get off of here, but
What about Dragapult?
we've already talked about Dragapult. Charizard Pidgeot, still a really strong deck. Has some issues with Dragapult, has some issues with Lugia, has some issues with Gardevoir. Where are we putting Charizard Pidgeot? What level is this deck on? The ability's still broken. We agree the ability is broken. But Charizard Pidgeot by itself, does it belong in A tier or does it belong in B tier?
I kind of think it does belong in A tier, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts on it. I think if it was just me, right now at this very moment, I'd throw it in A.
Yeah, part of me says, hey, listen, this deck is just still incredible with comeback potential and the strength of Charizard as it is. As a call for this event, where the strongest decks are like, some of the control plays. We got Lugia, we got Gardevoir. It's good in the Lost Box. Even Bolt can be tricky for it sometimes, especially with the Cornerstone. Might not be that well positioned right now. But I still think again just has a great power level, and with a little bit more of a known meta, and Zard can prepare and adapt to it. Again, it's not a deck that I would be surprised to see do well, but also if it wasn't its time just yet, then that also makes sense to me.
So we
All
got,
very valid.
so you're both saying like A or A and B. Where am I putting this power level?
I could see an argument for either A or B.
Yeah, same.
It's
It's
like,
kind of right on the line for me.
so
Yeah,
I
just
think
like I like to compare it to decks, right? So I'm like, okay, is it as strong as Bolt Ogerpon? Yes, but it's not good as
yes and
Dragon Ball,
no.
right? It's like it's got the bad matchups at the top, which is the problem with the deck.
Yeah.
Like having bad matchups with these tops, these two, and having bad matchups to Raging Bolt Ogerpon and bad matchups in the Dragapult, like seems like it makes it like at best a B tier play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It somehow always does it though.
Yeah, I mean, like people will hit the right matchups. Like you'll just hit like Miraidons and you'll hit, you know, Chin Pals or whatever, and you'll do well. But like I think it takes matchup roulette to do well with that deck.
Yeah.
All right, so
Okay.
something I don't have here, but I'd like to add is any type of RCS variants. I don't really know what exists currently. There's Arctinas, there's Arc Fireboxes, there's Arc Cooking. I'm sure somebody's cooking an Arc deck somewhere. Where do we think Arc deck lands on the list of, hey, Arceus is just a good consistent card, getting 2 cards you want every turn, like every turn, but once per game is just very good. Where do we think that lands? Is it kind of like on the same thing as Charizard Pidgeot or better or worse?
Uh Personally, I say worse, and I kind of do hope I eat my words because I love that card. I love that. I love how the decks play, but I don't think it's strong into this meta. I think it might have finally hit its point where it's phasing out.
I mean, like Lugia beats it, right? Gardevoir beats it. Raging Bolt
It
Ogerpon beats it.
beats it. Even Miraidon beats it. Tina usually beats it. Um, like it doesn't seem like it's time to shine, I guess.
Friends of the podcast, like Connor and stuff, are like turning over in their grave right now. Like,
Hey,
what's going
Connor
on?
won an online event. I
That's what I'm
just saw it
saying.
not recently with Guardy. That
True,
man is an
true.
Arceus stan.
Max, what do you
Yeah.
think?
I mean, same thing like you said, right? It's taking just too tough of matchups into heavily played decks. Lugia, Gardevoir, Raging Bolt are gonna be some of the most popular decks there, and Arceus has a hard time into it. If Arceus wants to go back to like an Aerodactyl, then maybe a little bit better into Lugia, but I still think it's 50-50 at best, even with the Aerodactyl. It's
Yeah.
really, do you go first or not? I
Yep.
think that it's just, while we saw Alex Schmansky show up with a, rogue Arceus pile to win EUIC, I am not that was back in 2023. I'm not predicting anything like that this year. I think
C
Arceus will
tier?
not be around.
We're going with C tier.
C or D for me.
Oof.
Because Greninja beats it technically.
All right, we'll put it in D tier. I'm cool with that. Just have it on the list
For this event. I'm not
for
saying
this
like the
event.
deck will
Yeah,
forever be bad, but
yeah. Okay, well, that's our tier list. I'll clean this up and get a nice little view of it out. But that's our tier list predictions. So thanks for running through that, boys, and we'll get that out. Let us know what you think in the comments below on our tier list, where we're trolling, where you think we got it wrong. We're happy to have a discussion. Last topic of the day for this episode is quick rundown of our meta predictions. Parker, let's start with you. What is the top played deck for the North American International Championships?
I might be buying into the hype a little too much. I think it's hard. It's hard. Let me actually say Lugia.
Parker's going Lugia. Maddox, what is your #1 most popular deck?
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to most popular decks, right, we're talking about decks that are known to be doing well, high power level, and people have the cards. People have had Lugia V Stars for a while and see the top deck at NAIC.
Hey, well, I don't like going chalk, so I'm saying Raging Bolt takes over the #1 spot, baby. Let's get some Raging Bolt action for my #2 deck. I'll take Lugia since we know that I have to put it in the top 2. Most likely, Maddox, what is your #2 deck?
#2 deck, right? If you had asked me a month ago, I would have said Dragapult or somewhere up here, but Dragapult's really not there. There's a new fun deck that people are playing. They've had a little time to get the cards. A little bit of a risky play, but it's so easy to pick up that I'm going with some Raging Bolt Ogerpon.
Raging Bolt, Ogerpon, #2. Parker, what's your #2, buddy?
Raging Bolt.
Raging Bolt, what's your #3?
Dragapult.
Woo! You think they're gonna combine these on the
I think
Yeah.
so.
yeah,
If
they
you play
have to-
Dragapult EX in your deck, they're just gonna call it Dragapult, I think.
Dang, okay. What if I play a 1 I got 001 Dragapult EX?
I'm just gonna search for
But
Dragapult
in your,
EX. So
in
yeah.
your Rage Drago deck, yeah.
All right, Dragapult for Parker, #3. Maddox, what's your #3?
I'm probably in the same boat. I think there's some other decks are gonna get close,
Woo!
but just when you combine all the different Dragapults, it'll sneak in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think combining them, I can see that argument.
What's your 2 and 3?
My 2 was Lugia.
Oh, okay.
My #3, like, I'm really considering putting Guardy there. Are that many people gonna play Guardy's the problem in a best of 3 format? Probably not. All right, I guess I'll say Dragapult since I know they're gonna combine all the variants, and I'll take Guardy at #4. Max, what's your #4?
I also have Guardy at 4. I think the deck is just too good not to be played right now. The one thing that's going to hold it back is just, not quite as shiny as some of the other ones. Some people are starting to hear about how good it is, but it's not going to quite get to everyone, and some people are a little uncomfortable playing Gardevoir. So that'll hold it back and just keep it at 4th most played.
Parker, what's your 4th most played?
If they combine it, I'm gonna go out on a whim and I'm
Ooh.
gonna say Lost Box.
Lost Box,
Ooh.
spicy. All right. What's your #5?
Guardy.
Guardy. Maddox,
That
#5.
would be close percentages, I think.
Little bit of a tricky spot. I mean, Lost Box is good, but I just don't know how many people are going to play it. Kind of like this past format. Miraidon isn't as good, but people just love playing their Miraidon. But I think I'm going to have to go with Charizard. I'm going to lock in solidly at #5.
Charizard at #5. That's a good one. What do I want my #5 to be? This is tough. I could see Lost Zone Box being there. And I can also see Charizard being there. It's like both of those are really good. I'm gonna go with Charizard. I think it has to make the graphic, so I'm gonna put Charizard there. With my last one, I'm kind of between Lost Zone Box and Miraidon. People do love their Miraidon. They have the cards. I think it beats Lugia. I'm gonna say Miraidon at #6. Maddox, what's your #6?
Listen, all you Miraidon enjoyers, you heard this past segment before where just Eric and Parker just hate on you. Talking to you specifically. The person who thinking about jumping off Miraidon says, no, I'm just going to send it. I'm just going to hit my electric generators. Listen, you're going to hit them. You're going to attach the double turbo. You're going to go, thank you very much. They're going to go look at their hand. They say, okay, I'll go next. And then they'll lose again, right? Go in the whole thing. Miraidon, 6th most played.
Bruh. Parker, what's your #6?
If they combine them, Stall,
Woo!
Aegean
If
Lax.
they like combine the controls. Okay.
If not, then Zard.
You only get one answer, you don't get 2 answers. Nice try
Okay.
It's fine. It's going to be Zard control.
True.
True. All right, Parker, what is the winning deck for the North American International Championships? What deck is going to take the whole thing down of almost
Gardevoir.
3,000 masters?
Gardevoir.
Gardevoir?
Yeah.
Shot.
Yeah.
No shot, buddy. Maddox, what do you think?
Gardevoir is a good answer. It's going to do really, really well. I think that someone is going to find just the right attacker with a Comfy engine, and we're going to see a version of Turbo Lost Box bring it home. Maybe with
All
Dragon
right.
Bolt, maybe
No,
with the
no, no,
suite of
no.
attackers.
You don't can't win. You can't just say like Turbo Lost
Oh,
Box.
okay. Do I need to pick the energy types
I'm
now
just saying, like
too?
Turbo Lost Box
Yeah.
and Lost Box Dragapult need to be two separate decks
Why?
because like having
Oh yeah, time
Dragapult.
out. There's a Dragapult Lost Box deck that exists. That's a turbo variant that doesn't play Sableye, that rushes to 7, plays 4 Mirage Gates, 4 Dragapult EX. It just rush into a
I would
Phantom
allow
Dive.
that.
Okay.
But if it plays Sableyes and Cramorants and things like that, it's no longer like Turbo Lost Box. It's just Lost Box Dragapult.
All right, I'm gonna say I would say Lost Box, Turbo Lost Box, and if Lost Box Dragapult wins, all you at home know that I still got it.
Exactly.
All right. I am going to say I'm going to say the A Dragapult variant wins NAIC.
You think so?
Yeah, I think someone's going to crack the list. And that top players like, hey, this is the cracked list. This is the way to play it, and they're just going to run well with it. I mean, we said it before, like just 1,000 damage across 4 turns is really, really good. Just got to figure out the list, right? And some people may be holding it close to the vest.
You know what hits 1,000 damage in 1 turn though?
Giratina.
Raging Bolt. I mean that too, I guess technically.
Raging Bolt. I don't know. I mean, is that impossible? 7.
Play 12 energy, 12 times 7. Quick maths, 840.
Yeah,
That's not 1,000.
True.
How many energies we
Okay.
got in Lugia? 17 times 7. What's that?
That's a lot. That's 13 or 1390.
See, now we're hitting the 1,000.
Less than that, but it's close.
Is it?
Well, because I mean, 7
Oh,
times 20 would
11,
be
yeah,
1,400 damage.
Yeah, I missed
So at
that.
1,400, see, I'm doing public math, y'all, just for y'all. So we got 1190, I think. Fact check that at home. If I got it wrong, and if you got it quicker than us, let us know in the comments below. And quote tweet us saying, "Learn math. Quit playing so much Pokemon."
Yeah, it's 1190.
If it's over 1,000, then it can hit more than Raging Bolt, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. We had a lot of content here. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. Maybe we'll do a special episode next week, depending on what happens in New Orleans. So stay tuned. We might do a special interview next week. But I hope you enjoyed this content. If you do, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below, or even retweet our tweets on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. But good luck to everybody going to New Orleans. Safe travels. So excited to see you there. But until next time, we'll see you then.
Yep. See ya.